said we're not, but now he's taking it upon himself to say, okay, we need this. Yeah, so we're not paying for it. Now he's asking for DPW to provide it. So let me see if we have it. If we're that far, we may. But no response.
I never knew which way to look.
Whichever way you.
I didn't realize there was two, screens until I.
I
came
think
here.
that's
I was
my
like, wait,
camera. I asked Jen which one is my camera. I think it's
Yeah.
that one is our camera.
when I
Not,
came in.
it's not quite as Hollywood as that when you're
No.
watching.
Also the direct, so this is YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, it's harder to deal with these. They can't do the close-ups that they could in the other camera. When the old system, they were able to isolate people.
I'm isolated enough as it is.
Okay, so we can go live. If you guys are ready, we can go live. Let me know when you guys are ready. You ready? Okay. Welcome everyone to the regular Board of Trustee meeting for Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. Is there a motion to open the meeting? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor. Meeting is hereby opened. Trustees Patino and Sullivan will be late, but they will be here today. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. The first item on our agenda is a presentation regarding Mercy College and the site plan for a proposed project for Mercy College. I think they're appearing via Zoom.
They are.
So do you have them?
Mr. Mandelbaum,
You guys see them?
you'll need to be
Can you
promoted.
promote them?
Just 1 second, Your
Your Honor.
Mayor. It says you're in a practice session, so I just want to make sure everything's okay with the recording.
And while we're waiting, can everybody in attendance please sign in the visitor logs just so we can keep track? Thank you.
Is it still a practice session?
It says it, but their computer is indicating it's not.
Okay.
So hopefully everything is going well.
Is there anybody from Mercy College wanting to be promoted? Yes? Nobody?
Well, I can tell you, Mr. Mayor, that there's zero attendees.
Okay,
being listed.
then you know what, let's move down to the next one and we'll come back to that. Is,
Can we stop and start over and try to get rid of the practice session? Because that might be why people aren't attending.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's the problem.
well, another trustee Patino's here. We can start over.
We were just vamping, waiting.
We're just vamping here.
We were just practicing till you got here.
Now the police chief is here, we're all in trouble.
Okay, let's start again. Let's stop it and start it again.
I feel like if I stop it and then restart it,
Yeah.
nobody's going to be able to.
Get back.
Do you have people in the audience? Can you see that there are people watching?
No, there's no attendee.
That's a
So-
problem.
That's a
Yeah.
problem.
Because we should
There
have
are people
attendees.
watching.
We have staff and,
Yeah. I know Rob
Trust
Barron
me,
is
the
watching.
amount of correspondence I've received from Mr. Mandelbaum over the last few weeks,
So what do you-
I know he's here.
Yeah, we gotta start
I think
stopping
we
it.
should just,
Unless there's some way they
The
can
only
reboot
8
it.
people here are, it's Dan's gonna get booted
Let's
and
just ask the
Larry
people who
and,
are
I mean, it's
online.
all
Sign.
internal. people.
You're,
if the
you're
people
on.
online could just sign
you're-
back in,
you're on.
log out, and then sign
Yeah.
back in when the.
Yeah, wait a minute
when it's
first.
restarted.
Valerie's there.
There are people popping up in the
You're,
attendee.
you're in,
Okay,
guys.
great.
You're in.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Practice sessions off.
Okay, practice session.
So do you see a Mr. Mandelbaum?
Yes.
Okay, promote him, please.
Thank you.
Is he there? Mr. Mandelbaum, are you present?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Hey,
Can I please request that you also promote
sound.
Tom Simmons from Mercy College?
There he is.
okay, welcome. And we're on to listen to your presentation. And then we can take the appropriate action. So
Thank you. Can I ask you to please promote Tom Simmons from Mercy College as well, since he's doing the presentation with me?
absolutely.
And just to let the board know, your backup documents are a little further down in your packet. It's in the resolution section, all
But
the backup.
there's no drawings, right?
No drawings though.
So just so so the public is aware of what's going on and the trustees are aware, we have a memo from Valerie, who is our village planner, describing what the project is. And because of the location of the Mercy College, what we have to do is decide if this should go to the planning board and to the Westchester County Planning Board as well. And then we have to hold the public hearing on this matter before this is all approved. So it's not an expansion, and I guess we'll go over this in more detail. It should be simply a referral, but we'll see. So who's here for Mercy College and who's ready to talk?
Hi, go ahead, Seth.
Well, Tom Simmons is here from Mercy College. Tom, please introduce yourself and then.
Welcome, Mayor Rizzolo and trustees. It's great to see you all.
You too.
And Tom, I don't know if you can share your screen so we can
Yes, I think I
show
can.
our presentation. Thank you. Mayor, I just want to make sure everyone can see Tom's screen right now.
We can.
Okay, great. So appreciate the time this evening. Good evening. My name is Seth Mandelbaum. I'm a partner with the law firm of McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. Pleased to be here on behalf of my client, Mercy College, this evening. As you just heard, Tom Simmons, who is the Vice President for Operations and Facilities. And I know most, if not all of you, know Tom well, as he's been with the college for, what is it now, Tom, 9 years?
Yes, 9 years, yeah.
So Tom and I first worked together on the Hudson Hall project, the dormitory, and we're back before you a few years after that on Victory Hall, which is the beautiful refurbished gymnasium. And now we're back on a couple of other projects on the Dobbs Ferry side of the campus. And Tom is going to take you through that. But first, we just want to note that part of the previous approvals had to do with significant changes to the entrance to the college and had to do with adding a right turn lane and updating the timing of the signals. And Tom is going to give you an update on that. I will just say, I think Tom and the college are just as frustrated as perhaps Dobbs Ferry and Irvington might be that project is not done yet. It's really not the college's fault. And Tom is going to explain why, but the good news is it's on target to be done this summer. The only other thing I'll note before handing over to Tom is we have a companion project that is just starting in front of the Irvington Planning Board, mostly having to do with those improvements to the front of the campus, new extensive landscaping, signage, as well as a sign at the back of the campus on the Irvington side going down on the new path that the college built to the train station in conjunction with Irvington and the Hudson House folks. But this project is before you tonight is two specific projects on the Dobbs Ferry side of the campus. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tom so he can take you through that. And at the end of the presentation, we're happy to answer any questions and do ask the board to consider adopting the draft resolution before you confirming that this is a type 2 action under seeker and referring the amended site plan application to the planning board for their recommendation. Tom?
Good evening, everyone. As Seth alluded to, these two projects that are before you tonight really are continuing our site and landscape improvements that we've done on the campus that I think have really enhanced the region and the campus use with the Aqueduct Trail splitting through. And I think those things have strengthened our community partnership with you. I'm going to give you a brief update on the Route 9 DOT improvement project that Seth mentioned that had already been approved. That was a condition of the new dorm. And I'll touch base with some of the delays, but I believe we're at a point now to actually bid that work and start the construction this summer. And then as Seth alluded to, there's two projects before you tonight, the new pavilion in the Grove area that we're recommending, as well as some changes to our existing R lot. So with that, as you're aware, our campus splits between Irvington and Dobbs Ferry. Outlined in red are the two project areas. The existing parking lot area, which really isn't going to change other than the footprint of what it does right now. And then an area we call the Grove, which is kind of a forever wild area with some large trees where you can see we've been having some tents there the last couple of years. So we're looking to put an open air outdoor pavilion there. So before I get into that, I know I've been communicating with some of you and your consultant on this frustrating piece with the required lane we had to add, the turning lane, and things related to the DOT project. Working with them has been a little bit of a challenge. I started this with Steve Grogg back in 2017 and 18 when he was still with McLaren. And the two things that really have delayed it was the land transfers. So we're in a unique situation where Mercy's land went into Route 9. And at first they wanted to do a permanent easement. When we put that all in, that got rejected by the state leaders, and they went back and wanted us to do a land donation. So the slivers of land that Mercy had into the road, we had to do a permanent donation to them as a zero cost transfer. Those have all now all gone through. All that has happened. But then the Attorney General's office rejected the whole thing because the title search was not a 40-year search as they required. It was a 20-year search. To make a long story short, we're there. The land has all been filed with Westchester County. Their design people just had us redo the signal devices and all the system that was out there that was on the plans from 18 that he approved. They just asked us to update that because they said the standard had changed. That's been done. They have told us we're okay to go ahead and bid this, and we're going to do that. And so I apologize for delays, but I think we're at a good spot. Just to remind you, what that did is that added that right-hand turning lane. That was a condition of the Hudson Hall project. And it also greatly changed these radii on there so we wouldn't have trouble with buses and all those things. And as you know, some of your other conditions to us as we report on the traffic that's coming in and out of our main entry, as well as using Langdon and from other areas. So I think we've worked well with you on getting the information you want. And this is a long time coming, but it's going to happen. And with that, as Seth alluded to, we have some related landscaping and sign changes that is in the Irvington property that is before them, because unfortunately the DOT work, they view things more as just infrastructure and engineering based. And we want to take this opportunity to beautify that corridor also. So I just thought I'd give you a brief update on that. That's happening. And I keep Dan and others in kind of in the loop of what's happening with that. So the R lot is a small parking lot at the lower level of Mercy, overlooking the end of the campus, overlooking the Hudson. It's behind our turf field. It has currently, I think, 150 spaces, and then it's got a couple more on the top edge, you can see where the scope area. So we've got 182 spots there now. We're planning on having 182 spots when we're all done. And this project is really just a mill. And we've got some sub-base issues and some curbing base issues just from life cycle. So we're going to just upgrade that. The park is going to stay the same. We're going to add the same dark sky lights that you had worked with us to approve on the new loop road that was put in front of Hudson Hall, and the pedestrian lights that we put in the plaza there. So it's really a continuation of some of the beautification and the infrastructure changes. We'll put the same security and safety elements we added on the train path, where we have some cameras and blue lights. And we feel like this is just a needed maintenance and lighting and those type of things that we would view as just normal wear and tear of things that you need to do. I have spoken with the landing folks about this very end of it here. I've spoken with their board and might put some additional screening at the end, but there was support of this is not really changing any footprint. The second project is putting an open air grove pavilion in our grove area. And this just shows you some of the site plan and design themes that we're going to be working with the planning board if you choose to go that route. It has stone dust paths like the Croton Aqueduct Trail, some boulder informal seating, bluestone, open air, timbers. So it will feel sustainable, it will feel natural, it will feel like a grove, a pavilion in the grove. And part of why we're doing that is over COVID, over the last 3 or 4 years, you can see here, we have put up these large tents, 40 by 100 tent. And one of the things we've all learned with the COVID process was, people really liked being outside. We had different little activities out there. We had open houses. We had accepted student days, and it worked well. We worked with Dan and others to permit that through you. But putting tents up and down isn't real sustainable, and it's pretty costly to be able to do that year after year. And with the floor. So we thought it would be a better solution to have something there that permanently could fit into the landscape and can really enhance the area for us to use for just some informal activities. And this park pretty much right now works as dogs walk through there, your neighbors, people it's just a forever wild kind of feeling area. This is the retention pond that you had us put as part of Hudson Hall. This ring road was added. The old road didn't go all the way around. So we had put some plantings and this sustainable stormwater features in here. So I really think it's just a beautification to finish that out. We've looked at the site and zoning plan with that as part of our submission. So of course we're considering that, and we're within the guidelines to be able to do on that. Starting to develop the elevations. The height is all the way to the top of the peak is no more than 22 feet. So the scale of this is about 4,200 square feet. So it's about 44 or 90, about the size of one of those 2 large tents that you saw earlier. With that, we've developed some renderings. With that, it's natural stone. Right now, we're thinking the roof would be a metal roof with probably copper that would age, and the patina would blend in with the area. There's no planned nighttime use. The use of this area will mimic what we do on the Aqueduct Trail, where that closes at dusk. So we will treat this as kind of an extension of that area. This gives you an idea of that loop road where you come around, and maybe 30 feet behind this is Landing Drive. So with the additional screening we put there in the last thing, I think they pretty much won't see most of that as you walk through the area. So that is our brief presentation for tonight. We are, as Seth alluded to, we're hoping that you're going to confirm this as a type 2 action under SECRA and refer this to the planning board, where we could get into the details of these really, I think, enhancements for the designs of the campus. At this point, we're willing to answer any questions anyone might have.
So I just want to confirm, you're not placing any lights in that pavilion, correct?
We would have some lights within it that would be functional while you're using it, but we would work them in a way when they would not be on later. So right now, it doesn't show on this piece, but we do have some lights on the underside of Up Under in here. Yes, we do.
Interior lights, Tom.
Interior lights.
Okay. And just for the parking lot, there's nothing, you're just pretty much replacing or upgrading the current lighting as it is now?
Yeah, the lighting down there is the older type fixtures. We retrofitted some of them as LEDs, but they will be the same dark sky fixture that we put on the vehicular and pedestrian loop road that you as a board had helped us select and approved about 4 or 5 years ago. We've put similar ones down on the train path. Those of you that have seen the path we did down to the Ardsley on Hudson station. So it just upgrades those.
Any other questions from the trustees?
Just one is, so there, you said it was about, what was the square footage of the pavilion?
It's 44 by 90. So it's about 4150 in the square foot.
And is that the flooring, is that, that's impervious, yeah?
Correct.
And have you calculated the pathways, the impervious surfaces there? Is that not impervious? Is that?
That is pervious, the pathways. This one that's accessible here on the one edge, we might need some pervious, but yes, our site planner has calculated the all that in the zoning plan that we'd be glad to share with I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Larry, do you have anything you want to ask or to add?
I do not, thank you.
Valerie, is there anything you want to shed light on?
No, at this point, I think this application is ready for referral to the planning board.
Okay, so let's try to move this along. So is there a motion to refer this project?
Question, Vinny?
Oh, I thought you were, okay.
I joined at 6:47 for Liz's minutes.
Let the record reflect
No, I
that
don't
trustee Sullivan joined us at 6:47.
This is something, if I understand right, from Valerie's memo, that's going to be referred to the planning board and the AHRB, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so is this something that like makes sense to have like a public meeting with all 3 boards on at the same time? Or it doesn't make sense for this project?
So, I mean, we can coordinate that if you prefer. I mean, it's really up to you. I mean, we've done that in the past on prior applications. I think to some extent, this particular application isn't as extensive as some of the other applications that have had those joint meetings, but if you prefer to coordinate a joint meeting, we can do that.
Someone who's advocated for those for a long time, I think this one wouldn't warrant the joint meeting. Would not.
Okay. Because it seems pretty, you can straighten
I
it
just
out.
was, I mean, the reason I asked it wasn't because I think the project itself warrants like a waiver from us or something else. It just seems like it would streamline instead of it going for a public hearing at the planning board, a public hearing at the AHRB, and then another public hearing at the board of trustees. But I defer to Valerie and the other.
Well, we can coordinate the public hearing if you'd like. So the first meeting that they'll attend, the planning board meeting, will be like it typically is a pre-submissions conference, and then the planning board will call for a public hearing. So the public hearing technically would be called for the first Thursday in July. So if the board is open to that, I can coordinate that with Lori Lee, and we could technically have it as a joint public hearing, but I think you would need a quorum of this board, correct, Lori Lee?
That is correct. In order of course, you can participate by observing, but if it were to be a joint public hearing, it would save the applicant having to return here for the second public hearing.
So I'm okay with doing a joint public hearing, but I do think it should wend its way through the planning board and the HRB, and when they're, then we could have that public hearing so that we could save maybe time and money on that. So that's fine.
I think procedurally, their first meeting at the planning board is an informal submission meeting, general discussion and presentation like you're getting tonight. Traditionally, the planning board then would schedule it to open the public hearing at their second meeting, which would be that first Thursday in July.
Okay, so is there a motion to refer this to the?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mayor. May I just clarify one thing? I'm a little confused and I want to get this right. So we are having a streamlined process. I apologize for interrupting, but it might be relevant to what you're about to do. My understanding was you're just referring this to the planning board and not the AHRB regarding the site plan application, but that it does require AHRB approval.
Prior to the building permit.
Prior to building permit. So I just wanted to clarify the timing of the AHRB. We're a little fuzzy on where that fits into this process.
So typically when you appear before the planning board, after they review the pre-submission conference, will usually recommend at that point for you to go to AHRB so that by the time they have their public hearing, you've already appeared before that board. And
Okay.
Dan's also on as well, so he can confirm that.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was what I thought,
that's how it'll work.
So
Okay,
today
thank you.
I'm referring it to the Dobbs-Ferry Planning Board, and I'm referring it for informational purposes to the Westchester County Planning Board. Right?
Yes, we'll take care of that. That's yes.
Right. Okay.
That's necessary. And also since you are the jurisdictional agency over approvals, you'll have to start the secret process. And the evidence in the materials that have been presented to you indicate classifying this as a type 2 action, which would then require no further environmental review.
If I can get to that motion so I can make those findings, I can move this along.
Yeah,
So-
it's down.
So is there a motion to refer, and I'm going to read it, but is there a motion to refer this project to the Dobbs-Ferry Planning Board as required by the zoning code and refer it for informational purposes to the Westchester County Planning Board? And further, be it resolved that based on a review of the environmental assessment form, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Dobbs Ferry classifies the project as a type 2 action in accordance with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act and its implementing regulations, which indicates that no further environmental review is required. And following presentation of an overview of the project by the applicant's representatives, the board now takes certain actions prior to the conducting further review of the application, such as the secret laws. So is there a motion? Trustee Asher Rosen.
Close, that was close.
I'm gonna write myself in notes. Trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously. And it's only 6:57 and I've already made,
And
thank you.
We will attempt to coordinate a public hearing jointly in accordance with open meetings law mandates. So I'll work with Dan and Valerie and the chair of the planning board.
Okay, let's move on to action item number.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very
You're
much. all.
welcome.
Take care.
Take care.
Let's move on to discussion number 2, which is a presentation on 72 Colonial Colonial Avenue, I guess that is, right? Is there anybody here? Yeah, check and see. It should be Niles.
Kane?
Yeah, it should be CAIN. No?
That's unusual.
Okay. We're going to table that matter. If it comes on later, we can go to it, but if not. Let's move to a presentation by the Jazz Forum Arts on the Dobbs-Ferry Summer Music Series. And I believe we have Mr. Martinelli here to speak on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, don't worry. I'll grab it.
And this is last year's.
Welcome back.
Yeah, really. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Good evening, everybody. And thanks for having me present. It's been a few years since I've presented here. For those that don't know, I'm Mark Morganelli from Jazz Forum Arts. I'm the executive director and founder of the nonprofit, which we began in 1985 to present the Riverside Park Arts Festival in Manhattan. And then when we moved to Dobbs Ferry in 1991, 31 years ago, I decided to try to have free concerts continue up the river here, so to speak. So we started with the county of Westchester doing the Kensico Dam Music Fest. We did some stuff in Tarrytown where I was presenting Jazz at the Music Hall, a series of concerts numbering 150 over 22 years from 92 to 2013. And then we partnered with various municipalities. Our biggest year was, I think, 2008, right before that crash. And we had 53 free summer concerts in 13 communities, Westchester, Rockland, and Fairfield. But the last several years, we've been at a level of 32 free summer concerts. It used to be 10 in Dobbs Ferry, and that switched to 8 to more be in line with our other events at Lyndhurst and Pearson Park in Tarrytown. And then we do concerts with Sleepy Hollow and Ossining as well. I founded these concerts here, the Dobbs Ferry Summer Music Series in 2000, 22 years ago. So this actually, even though we missed 2020, sequentially, this is the 22nd annual Dobbs Ferry Summer Music Series. Always presented in collaboration with the Village of Dobbs Ferry and generously supported by you folks for all these years. So I appreciate that. For those, again, that don't know, we were supported with taxpayer dollars here for $10,000 a year for 10 free concerts for the first 20 years. We didn't do concerts in 2020 because of the pandemic. We came back last year in 2021, offered 8 free concerts at Waterfront Park and did them for $5,000 last year. So what I'm here today to talk about is a request to go back to level funding of $1,000 per event that we present here in Dobbs Ferry. So that would be $8,000 for 8 concerts. It's pretty simple.
So
that's pretty much the deal.
So just for the just so we could say this, you're proposing to have 8 concerts starting on July 6th, running until August 24th, from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. and you're looking for a total of $8,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's move this along. I think this shouldn't be a problem. So is there a motion to authorize the village to enter into a public-private partnership agreement with the Jazz Forum Arts in the amount of $8,000? Trustee Rosen, Asher, second trustee Patino, all in favor? I don't see trustee Sullivan raising her hand. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's all in favor, it's fine.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's a pleasure. And as you see from the brochure, we've got a real wide range of things, everything from jazz to Brazilian to Dobbs Ferry's own Julian Caldwell, known as Jay Swiss, who's been asking me for a gig down here for like 5 years or 7 years or something. And then we have a tribute to Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers with folks that had played with Art Blakey, and he was my neighbor in Greenwich Village. So that's going to be a killer show down here at the river. Thank you all very much.
I just want to publicly thank you for everything you've done for Westchester, really. Those concerts are the highlight of my summer, and they're great intergenerational events. So if there's anybody who hasn't been to them, I cannot recommend it enough. Even if you don't like jazz, just go down there. It's always beautiful to be down at the waterfront with your kids and your parents and friends and family. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, presentation number, which is really technically number 4, but it's going to be number 3 tonight, is from the Our Streets group. So you guys are welcome, and when you're ready, let us know and just tell us who you are. Clock is running, but I don't want to put any pressure on.
Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Play the presentation.
Oh, it's funny, it's playing on mine. It's not playing.
Oh, we should probably.
It's in a slideshow on mine, but it's, you're seeing.
Probably need to swap the screens. That's not too much to ask. Sorry.
No problem.
Can you just click on the next slide?
Oh, PowerPoint purist.
Clearly.
Sorry. Yeah, it does. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Just pick the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Just want to make sure. All right.
It's not sharing.
It's not sharing.
It's not updating.
No. Let me stop sharing. Is this one that's sharing?
Yeah.
Public presentation.
What do you normally do now when this happens during your meetings?
I tell jokes.
I figured that.
Sure.
You know what I can do? I can enter the Zoom and then I can show it on my,
Oh, that would be great if you don't mind, Melissa.
What are you doing?
I can enter the Zoom and then show it on my.
She has a copy in her email, so she should be able
Tablet.
to share it from there. And I can get started.
Keep, oh, yeah, that's fine.
I can just get started.
You can just introduce yourself.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. My name is Brianne Lusick, and I'm here with Jesse Pfluger. Jesse Pfluger and I are village residents, parents, and members of Our Street Dobbs Ferry, a group dedicated to making our village safer for children, pedestrian, and bicyclists. On September 30th, 2021, Our Streets and the Westchester Youth Congress held a community walking tour. It gave participants a chance to experience 3 different routes that children take to Springhurst Elementary and to discuss their own experiences walking in the village. Approximately 30 people participated in the tour, including Mayor Rosillo and Trustee Rosen-Asher, representatives from the Dobbs Ferry School District, Board of Education, and PTSA, as well as community advocates and concerned residents. Since the walking tour, we have been collaborating with the village on what we saw and heard during the event. We would like to thank members of the traffic committee, including Trustee Rosenberg, for their input on this presentation. We are also grateful to Village Administrator Melissa Ferraro and Police Chief Guevara for providing us with guidance and information about traffic and pedestrian safety in the village. We'd also like to thank the Dobbs Ferry School District for supporting our work tonight with a letter of support that you should have in your board materials, along with highlighted residents' letters of support. With that said, we'd like to discuss the places on the walking tour that were of most concern to the participants. For each of these places, we will also discuss the changes that participants recommended to make them safer. Are you able to share now, Melissa?
I'm trying to get into the Zoom.
Okay.
I need the link and I'm trying to find it.
It's on the website.
I know I have to get on the website, but
Oh,
that's what I'm trying to do.
You didn't get a Zoom reminder by email?
You can't hear?
I deleted it because I was going to be here.
good.
There was your mistake.
Never.
You can't hear her?
anything.
Yeah, can
Okay.
you move the microphone down?
Yeah, get a little closer when you talk.
All right, sorry.
It also slides down.
Yeah, it's,
Good.
There we go. Thank you.
Could you try this? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe she can try it and just click on this individual
Right.
slides.
yeah.
We're not purists.
I think throws me more than a really good PowerPoint.
Just go to 2.
That's fine. Whatever makes you happy, Matt.
Yeah, they're still seeing the other one.
Yeah,
fine.
it's not
We
moving
We
along.
can see it though.
Oh,
Oh, it's not.
It's not
can you-
moving
you can't go
along.
down?
We're not able to
Uh,
hear it. We'll do it from
There you go.
here.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Here we go.
Okay, you talk.
She's gonna advance. Here we're.
Get closer to them. Yeah.
Yes. Here we're looking at a stretch of Walgrove Avenue after the intersection with Bellwood. This goes all the way up to the Springhurst bus circle. Along with school buses, this road is heavily used by parents taking kids to and from school, as well as people going to and from Children's Village. The first issue here is that there's no sidewalk on the west side of Walgrove Avenue. There are CV staff members who live on the CV campus, and if they want to walk to downtown, they have to walk in the roadway, which is obviously dangerous in the best of situations. And there's often stormwater and debris like leaves and branches on this part of the road. Not having a sidewalk is especially significant because of the second issue on this stretch of road. Participants felt that speeding and swerving to avoid potholes are common on Upper Walgrove. There have been at least 2 vehicle crashes on this stretch of road since 2020. In one of these incidents, the driver was going fast enough to knock down a utility pole and take out power to Springhurst for the day. We have been lucky that these haven't involved any children, and we don't want to rely on luck to protect children and other pedestrians and bicyclists. Participants had 2 main recommendations for Upper Walgrove. First, install sidewalks on the west side of Walgrove Avenue. This serves a number of goals. It would better integrate CV staff members into the village. It would also reduce the number of cars on this road, which makes the road safer for pedestrians and bicyclists and reduces air pollution and use of gas. Second, several participants said they would like to see traffic calming measures like speed bumps on Upper Walgrove to slow drivers. This slide deals with the intersection of Bellwood and Walgrove Avenues. The traffic pattern was changed here in 2020. When this was done, there were originally a number of bollards put up to narrow the road at the intersection, but most of these have gone missing, as you can see from the picture. In addition, the old road painting is still visible. So it's not clear to drivers where they should stop and to participants to pedestrians where they should cross. Participants on the walk suggested the village invest in a permanent solution, such as de-paving the roadway and fixing the inconsistent road painting. Here we are looking at Broadway crosswalks where there are no traffic lights. Many participants felt unsafe when crossing Broadway at these types of crosswalks. As you know, in 2019, a resident was killed crossing Broadway in front of the high school. Obviously, we don't want another tragedy like this. We understand that the village cannot act unilaterally to improve Broadway because it is a state road. Participants wanted the village to work with the New York State DOT to make these crossings safer by creating a third turning lane or narrowing the roadway to 2 lanes where possible. Road striping is also needed to clearly delineate lanes. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Jesse.
So my group, started at the Springhurst Stairs, and we walked the area of Beacon Hill, Ogden Avenue, Chestnut Ridge Hill, and Price Street. And what we're seeing here, no, this is one too far. Yeah, what we're seeing here is Chestnut Ridge Hill and Price Streets. Participants of my group noted both the lack of sidewalks and also that there are no speed limit signs in the whole area. The group commented how both streets felt big for a neighborhood. They're rather wide and they have a double yellow line. how participants felt exposed walking on the busy road, especially when walking around cars that are parked. And they commented that driving cars went by rather fast. As for solutions, the most favored idea of my group was to add 2 stop signs at the intersection of Price Street and Hickory Hill, making this a true 3-way stop intersection like we have many others in the village. Some participants familiar with the petition for the 20 mile per hour also suggested to add Price Street and Chestnut to the list of streets with reduced speed limit if that moves forward. And then there were other ideas as a variation of speed bumps, speed tables like Ogden Avenue, narrow the road with bollards, planters, and other means so that drivers are encouraged to pay attention and drive in a more focused way. There's also a design developed by the village engineer to create a parking protected shoulder on one side of the road. But as that limits parking on the other side of the road, it was both met with resistance from residents as well as it raised concerns for the participants of this walking tour that it may actually encourage speeding. Here we're looking at the intersection where Chestnut Ridge Way meets Ogden Avenue. And this is the intersection where most pedestrians from the neighborhood and the children walking to Springhurst cross over to reach the sidewalk of Ogden Avenue, which you see here on the left side of this picture. As you can see in the picture, there is nothing at this intersection to alert drivers that pedestrians may cross here. And the group commented on this. They said they did not feel safe crossing here. Interestingly, there is a crosswalk at Beacon Hill and Ogden Avenue, but the group unilaterally said they would not go out of their way to cross there. Neither will our children, no matter how often we tell them that. And also this crosswalk is not connected to Chestnut Ridge Way because there's no sidewalk there. So the recommendation was to adapt the street design to the patterns of how people are walking and to add a crosswalk at this intersection. Okay. For Ogden Avenue, my group walked from Ashford towards the Rivertown Square on the right side of the road. At the first block up until Irving Place, there was a sidewalk, and then it ended, and starting there, the word best to describe participants' mindset was probably confused. They weren't sure what the street design wanted them to do as pedestrians, as bikers, or as drivers. There is a wide shoulder on the right side, but it varies in how wide it is. And everyone was like, where am I supposed to walk? Is this indicating like the replacement of a sidewalk? Is this indicating that cars should park in here? And further down the road, there's even a double shoulder, and there was discussion whether or not this is supposed to be a bike lane. The group did not feel safe at this part of the road where there was no sidewalk. And also residents came out and commented that they perceive speeding as an issue on Ogden. And there was discussion whether or not parking was allowed on the left side of the road where there is a smaller shoulder. So there was no specific idea or recommendation of what to do other than make the design more clear and or add signs or signage that, that suggests which traffic participants are supposed to do what. Then we went to Beacon Hill. So we were walking from the Springhurst stairs on the left side of the road, that is where the sidewalk is, towards Ogden Avenue. There is the apartment complex, the Summit, and there is a parking lot. And at that parking lot, there is a very wide gap in the sidewalk. At that gap, there is this striped walkway that basically forces pedestrians to walk out onto the street while cars are parked where the sidewalk naturally would continue, as you can see in this black car down here. So unilaterally, the group felt very exposed walking out there. They commented they didn't want to walk their children there and asked if the sidewalk could be continued more naturally, either as a physical sidewalk or by moving this striped path over. And then the last area of comments, this is from all groups that walked, was concerning the sidewalks on Ashford Avenue. They reported areas of disrepair, missing crosswalks, missing curb ramps at critical intersections like Mohican Park, Beacon Hill, Washington Avenue, and Price Street. And on this bottom right picture, you can see that the sidewalk actually ends on Price Street and leaves the pedestrians nowhere to go. There's no crosswalk. So the group asked if a crosswalk could be added there so they could safely reach the existing sidewalk on the other side of the road, and or continue the sidewalk at least until the bus stop, which is located at Irving Place, to connect those neighborhoods a little more naturally. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the participants. Some of the board members joined us to experience our neighborhoods, and we would love to engage more on maybe coming to some practical and reasonable solutions for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. You know, as you indicated, I was walking, I think Shari was there as well. And no, we did notice that there were issues. And look, the safety of everyone is our paramount concern. And I know that we've addressed some of those issues, I believe. And we certainly, in conjunction with the traffic committee, are more than willing to address all those issues. We want to make this a walkable, safe community. I think we all feel that way. So do any of the trustees want to add anything?
Yeah, I did do the walk, and I was amazed at, even though I walk a lot every day at some of those paths, that when I was really paying attention, because my kids are grown-ups now, if I had children with me now, I would not have felt safe on some of those streets, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted them walking by themselves. But I really want to thank, this was an incredible amount of work that was done by a very dedicated group of volunteers who took it upon themselves to do this. And, you know, this is the kind of civic engagement that, you know, we all appreciate. It really does take a village, and there's lots of issues and concerns and things that are important to you. So if get a group of people together and, you know, you put the time in, and this was an extraordinary study. And I just really want to thank all the volunteers for everything that they did. It was very eye-opening to be on that walk. And, you know, thank you for dedicating so much of your time to making Dobbs Ferry better. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just I want to echo that and say it's been a pleasure working with you guys over the last several months to bring this in. I appreciate the fact that you've engaged the traffic committee, that you've been very willing to engage in the preparation of this with the village. It's, you know, there's a lot of complicated things. This was a village that was designed before there were cars, so a lot of these roads, you know, were sort of adapted to this new non-horse use. And we are still, you know, still with the remnants of some of the decisions that were made a long time ago, and trying slowly but surely within the constraints of, you know, budgets and, you know, which roadways are ours and which aren't ours, to make these changes. But the idea of, you know, one of the things you said that really resonated was, if we can't change the roads, change the markings in a way that sort of guides people to the natural way they're going to go anyway, and gives them some measure of protection there. And a lot of those things should be easier than, you know, large construction and infrastructure projects. So we should, you know, really sort of start to spec those out with the traffic committee, and try to see, you know, where the low hanging fruit is. But I said I'd be short-winded, but that was not true. Thank you.
For you, that was short, Matt.
I'll be actually short-winded. I do want to make a comment, which is, or have a question, and Matt, you may be able to answer this just right off the top. What are we doing to follow up, and what are the next steps here to turn, you know, some of this into appropriate, tangible action?
Well,
the traffic committee is meeting with this group, or I just don't know what we're doing next.
So this is the second time I'm officially seeing this presentation. The first was back in late January, early February in draft form. The R Streets group has been very good about following the process and engaging with the traffic committee. So, you know, we have a pretty smooth process running. Where we go from here, you know, you know, I will tell you that the traffic committee has captured all of these things. There's a spreadsheet that is about 85 lines long of individual things that need to be prioritized and looked at in the village. And this gives us an opportunity to sort of, you know, look through that project list again, reprioritize it, and, you know, and come back and try to seek the time and the funding to do the work that we need to do.
Right, so I would suggest that the traffic committee just come to us, and there is some low-lying fruit that I guess we could go for, certainly. So I know, Donna, you want to speak, and you've been intimately involved with this. So.
Yeah, I've been very involved with this for many, many years, and I also live in the Ogden Ashford area, so I'm very familiar with what goes on there. And I'm very grateful that you're bringing this up again. A lot of these things have been looked at in the past, and for bureaucratic reasons, a lot of it could not be done for this reason and that reason or whatever. So I think it might be good to find out what the objections are and then go from there and solve the objections, because there's always a reason for not doing something, and that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. You all know that we are working with the state on the Route 9, and Melissa, Matt, and I have been also working. They're going to be doing a restriping on Route 9, and we're trying to get them to implement some changes and some striping changes while they do this paving project, which will be next year. We think it's next year. Narrowing the road, turn lanes, you know, et cetera, and Matt knows what it's like working with the New York State DOT. Is very interesting. The Route 9 people are still working on that. We've got Andrea Stewart-Cousins now, who is trying to find funding for engineering study. So hopefully that will be coming up. Ogden Avenue was kind of like an experiment. That multi-use path, I think you're right. We do need more markings there. The idea was to have a walking, biking path on Ogden Avenue that didn't require a sidewalk, because a lot of the residents on that street did not want sidewalks, as with Price Street. So we came out with the idea of, let's create a lane that people can walk and bike on, and the village would be plowing it. It does need more signage because people don't know what that's there for, and we have to look at parking there as well. That one issue on Ogden Avenue, the corner at Irving Place, just so you know, a new house has gone up there, because I'm also the liaison to the planning board, and we had them put in a sidewalk, or at least around that entire corner, halfway on Irving Place to the end of the property of that corner house now has a sidewalk. So that should help a little bit, at least lead people safely to the multi-use path. So there are a lot of things on there that we need to look at. There's rights of privacy, private property issues, which is always a major thing. But thank you for putting this all together, because I know a lot of this has been looked at over the years. And as I said, for one reason or the other, not everything gets done. And it's time you start looking at stuff, even if it's like one section at a time. And let's get some of these changes done. Thank you so much.
Nicole, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. All right. Thank you again for your time and your effort that you put in this. I know that there are a lot of people here, and I think that they're here for Price Street. So I don't know if that you guys think that it's going to interact. There's nothing on board or imminent regarding Price Street at all. If you want to come up and talk about how you feel about Price Street, again, there's nothing on our agenda. There's nothing in the works to do anything in particular. We just heard a suggestion, maybe 2 stop signs, which, you know, that could be, we could do that. Perhaps, or add a crosswalk, that kind of stuff. But you guys want to, someone wants to come up and talk? Go ahead, Lisa, come on up. Tell us who you are, where you live.
Of course. Hello, my name is Lisa Bai, 63 Ogden Avenue. I expected to come here and hate everything that you guys said was. So I expected to hate everything I heard, but actually I really appreciate all the work you've done and the studies you've done. It is a challenging situation. I'm not speaking from the Price Street perspective. I'm speaking from the perspective of a resident. I've experienced the Ogden Avenue debacle, and quite honestly, I think the intent was to slow traffic down by making the street narrow as well. And my perspective, although not statistically proven is that it's kind of made it more dangerous. I appreciate the mayor's expertise in walking the streets and mayor and members of Springhurst, but I do really appreciate someone who is educated and has the skill set to analyze what the recommendations should be in a village regarding traffic patterns. So I'd be interested in knowing what traffic engineers think about recommendations to be made in the village. And also just, you know, if we're looking to redesign streets because of a pothole, perhaps what we need to do is fix the pothole and not redesign the street. So that's kind of the low hanging fruit, which I think is great. And I would love to be part of your committee. So please reach out to me if you can. I would love to do that. And the other thing I comment on is, you know, we're stressed on expenses today, right? So we live in a village that the expenses are sky high. Our income is probably additional between parking, between permits and rents and taxes that we're earning, but our expenses are really stressing the bottom line. So with that, when we're talking about these very ambitious projects in the village, I caution everyone, of course, everybody's aware of this, is to be wary of what we're doing to our tax base and what we're doing to the people that are trying to move into our village. And those of our people that want to find a place in a very beautiful village that could be inclusive. We want to be inclusive to everyone and not create a tax base that creates exclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else? Come on, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, trustees. I'm Jeremy Gombin, the president and CEO at the Children's Village, and I came here to lend my support to the recommendations. Great work by the committee. I was part of that walk-in tour, so I got a sense of what's needed. Would love to see some of the recommendations for Walgrove implemented. The sidewalk recommendation, it's not just CV staff. 120 families are Dobbs Ferry residents, many, over 50%, being residents of this community, of this very inclusive community for over 20 years. So, you know, those are your neighbors, your residents, your children went to school, are going to school with them. And for our part, we have engaged engineers and we are working with FEMA to look at everything we can do on that plateau to maybe mitigate some of the impact of sustain the kind of rains we've had. And Mr. Mayor, you've seen what can happen when there's rainfall on our plateau and some of the debris that ends up downstream. And our project to make Snake Hill our primary entrance continues. We hope to make that project a reality because that will significantly impact traffic coming into the village, but that's an expensive proposition. It'll take time. In the meantime, whatever we can do to be supportive of this project, please count on us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you for having me. Gene Pitts of the Citizen here in Dobbs Ferry, obviously. So thank you, Mayor Rosillo and Board of Trustees for having me. I just wanted to kind of say thank you for that, and to Jess and Brianne for doing a great job presenting earlier and having this discourse around that. I was able to actually go on the walking tour with many of you folks several months ago, and it meant a great deal for me for opening my eyes for several things. There were three areas that kind of stuck out for me. Having lived on Walgrove for about 10 years and walking to the train every day, you know, seeing some cars flip over on Walgrove, right, is just very concerning, right, on the same road where my kids walk to school is one big thing. Areas on Broadway, like super wide crosswalks, right, with cars swerving around others, just feels dangerous to walkers, to kids, to the other cars, right, just not great for everybody. And then Jeremy, right, the friends, family, Dobbs Ferry residents in DSR housing, right, going to school, right, they have options of walking in the street, no sidewalks, or going through a cut open fence, right, to get to Springhurst. You know, it just feels like we can do better, right, and a lot of practical stuff. So I know there's a lot of different views on tax bases and all those things, and some things can be, you know, more easily done than others, but I really appreciate the time and the attention, and just wanted to throw my support behind, you know, the outreach to the community to get those things done. So thank you all Appreciate it.
Thank you. I mean, this is the kind of a project, come on up, Bob, but Bob, you can come on up. Oh, just let me state this. I mean, this is the kind of project where obviously there's a lot of engagement. And I'm just going to tell you, things fall off our agenda, things been on our agenda. So don't let us, and I know that other trustees don't want to just, we're all intent to do the right thing and get this done right. So, but things, walls fall down in Gould Pool, flooding happens on Pietro Place, or this happens. So just, I'm just saying you have a responsibility to keep us focused on it, and then we'll move along on it. So go ahead, Bob.
I have two issues.
Also, you are.
Oh, Ogden Avenue. I'm a 50-year resident of Ogden Avenue. I bought my house 50 years ago.
And your name is?
Bob Radomski. I had one issue. Now I have two. Years ago, this was wanted to be Ogden Avenue. They wanted sidewalks on that also. Funny thing is, the people that really pushed for it, they're gone. Just like a lot of the people here that are going to be here only till their kids graduate, and they're gone. They're going to leave us with the mess. Keep that in mind when you decide on any of that, because these sidewalks have to be maintained by the homeowners, and they have to be shoveled off with the snow and everything. Now, you people want to come up and shovel the snow off the sidewalk, you can put it in front of my house, but I'm not looking to do that. Okay, that's the first one. I really wasn't prepared for that. That's why I just went that far. What I'm prepared for is, why do we allow dog walkers in our playgrounds? Is there a reason?
You mean, why do we allow dogs in the playground?
Dog walkers in our playgrounds.
What do you mean?
Gould Park is a perfect example. You go down there in a football game or anytime these kids are playing, there's dog walkers in there. I've seen kids playing in the grass area, rolling around where dogs had just peed in. It's terrible. Also, I've seen our DPW clean the catch basins full of plastic bags with dog droppings in them. They also put them in recycling bins and garbage cans that the homeowner now has to deal with. I think we need a little bit more signage and some more fines. And during football games and things that we have down in the park, we have a code enforcer. $100 fine is pretty good. I think we can get a couple of them down there at that time and stop this. No? Good idea, right? Let's go for some signs. You already spent $8,000 on music. I think a couple of $1,000s on fines are not that bad a deal. Also, you have a stormwater report coming up. These people are throwing their bags in the catch basins. Where do you think that stormwater is going? And these are more likely people that are green people, environmentalists, if you ask them. I don't believe that. They're phonies. One other thing has nothing to do with this now. Just a reminder, school board elections are on May 17th. We all understand that? All residents should be concerned and go vote. With the amount of school tax we pay, and I've been paying for 50 years, my kids are out of school for 30. I think we should know what's going on in the schools. Do any of you realize if you have people in middle or high school that these kids cannot read a letter or the Constitution or anything because it's in script? They can't even sign their name. Please go out and vote. We need a change. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ashley Curran. I reside on 30 Price Street. I don't know if you can hear me.
You can lower that if you.
So I'm here just to speak on some of the suggestions that were made on Price Street. I'm here in support of having safer streets by means of adding a speed table, speed bumps, speed radars. I am not in support of redesigning our street to add chicanes, narrowing our street, or adding a sidewalk or anything similar to that. I'm aware of a petition which has been circling the village with suggestions for many streets. I believe that those who do not live in our streets should not be making the suggestions for a street that I live on. So I'm here only in regards to speak about Price Street. I hope each of you have received the petition that was signed by so many of us who live on Price Street itself that oppose these suggestions and would hope that the board would consider our suggestions since it directly involves us. We can clearly see that the narrowing of Ogden Avenue has made it easy for drivers to speed down the road. We can make changes to the village, but if the drivers are not held accountable, they will continue to speed. I suggest having police officers parked on Price Street for a few weeks consecutively so that drivers would know that there is a high chance of getting ticketed on the street. We bought these homes knowing the layout of the street, knowing that our children walk and play along these streets, and many of us on Price Street would like to keep the integrity and the aesthetics of our street as is, and we hope the board would heavily consider that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Leslie Papa. I also live on Price Street, on 81 Price Street, and I am continuously blown away by the tireless work that our streets and the folks that have all joined together, and with all of your support as well, to try to come up with a plan for safer streets. I'm also continuously impressed. I mean, I heard, Lisa say she was prepared to, hate everything they had to say. The team working on this has sought a lot of guidance along the way for the past several years. And when they're faced with something that neighbors disapprove of, or we understand will be such of high cost or devalue, someone's property or in their opinion, that they come up with other ideas, so it like just continuously trying to come up with a plan that doesn't cost a lot of money, that doesn't raise taxes an exorbitant amount. And I think we heard them tonight with like coming up with just adding stop signs. We all acknowledge that there's a problem. And so what's the bare minimum that we can do to make these streets safer and make our community a really welcoming place? School buses stop, in sixth grade. So we're asking 10 and 11-year-olds. And also my third grader walks to school every day and walks home and from Price Street. And, we have done it countless times with her to make sure that she's safe while doing it. And oftentimes we meet her to do it with her, but I just want the work to continue. And I know, Mayor, you said just stay on you. And I think, they've proven that. And so just getting to that next step, I think, is of utmost importance. And so that we can actually push some of these things through. I don't think, with all of these minds together, I think we can come up with some really valuable solutions here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Matt DiStefano, a 47-year resident, lived almost my entire life on Ogden Avenue. I definitely have some concerns. Ogden Avenue, when I moved here many, many years ago, was a very quiet street. I do agree now, speeding on the street is a problem. Seems like a lot of people are bringing up speeding, so I think obviously the first issue has to be the policing. It probably is the most dangerous issue in the town. I know since I've been here, more people have probably been killed from speeding than anything else. So obviously traffic stops, speeding tickets and things like that on that street have to increase. I'm very worried about any changes that are going to be made because the last change that was made to Ogden Avenue was done at 2:00 in the morning when I was sleeping without me being aware of it. I woke up and the road was shifted 20 feet towards my property. So now the road on Ogden Avenue has a 6-inch give. So people like myself or my mother or other people on the street basically risk their lives every day backing out of a street that's very, very dangerous because everything was shifted to the right without asking anybody from our street if that was something we wanted or something we felt was safer. Now, I can tell you, I've done a ton of research on this, and I kind of feel like the traffic board has not. The number one statistic calming effect on a street is to have parking on both sides of the street. That is statistically proven. Okay, narrowing the street nationwide only lowers the speed limit by 4 miles an hour. Most of the cars on Ogden are going over 40. So at 40, most residents or pedestrians are being killed by that anyway. Okay, so what happened on Ogden, I'm very worried about happening on Price Street. They took away parking on one side of the street, my side of the street, and they in essence widened the road. They didn't narrow it. If you look at that from either side of the road, the bottom or the top, it's a freeway. And unfortunately, since that other mess at the end of Ogden with all those stores that are closing down near the sawmill, The only thing that does now is provide the way for people to get to the Sawmill Parkway. So 90% of the cars coming up Ogden and Price aren't even residents. These are people that are quickly trying to get onto the highway to get out of here. I mean, I have a radar gun. I have spent hours outside basically taking the speed of cars, okay? Average, low 40s. We all know the statistic. If you get hit with a car going 40, you're probably dead, okay? So I think two things need to be done. It needs to be narrow, but it needs to be narrow by keeping parking on both sides. The second thing that needs to be done is the village needs to figure out a way to not make that the way to get onto the Sawmill Parkway. Get them to the Ardsley Bridge. That thing's another mess because they should have made the off-on ramp going northbound and they looped it around and everything else. So most people don't go that way anymore. So all that highway traffic comes up our road. So that becomes a really serious issue. Now, I just worry though about the solution. And again, I worry about it because if you talk to anyone from Ogden, that was a disaster, okay? People will tell you, everyone on that street, when they made those changes, traffic increased and speed increased. People realize it's the quickest way to the highway and they realize they can go very quickly up that street. So I'm just hoping those things are taken into consideration when you try to figure all this out. And please be aware, as some of the people here have said today, you're talking to people who have lived on this street a long time. So this is not just some issue you're handling in a committee. This is our lives. This is our backyards. In fact, unfortunately, my front yard's on Price, my backyard's on Ogden. I'm not sure where else I can go at this point. So I'm kind of running out of spots. I guess you guys are coming from up top next. Okay, but I hope it's addressed. I hope it's looked at, but I hope it's looked at right. And we came here today because I've been in the town, like I said, 47 years, and sometimes we don't do the right thing. We just do what gets the most noise. So, I mean, we're basically here to say we're going to make a lot of noise to make sure this gets done right.
That's fine, Matt. And I would encourage you to join either the traffic committee or the Safe Streets Committee and put your 2 cents in.
You know, I was thinking about doing that. And once I talked to people on the traffic committee, I kind of knew that that was a dead end. The traffic committee, when I asked them to put possible speed bumps on Ogden Avenue, told me that they couldn't do that, even though it would really solve the problem because the fire truck that might go up there once every 2 weeks to a false alarm has to slow down as it goes over the speed bump.
Well, now you know the problems, the issues that we face with, because safety and for fire safety is, and I'm not going to get into a debate with you, right? But the fire department needs to get to the places and 2 minutes can mean a life. So, but I still encourage you, we're not going to go back and forth, but I encourage you to join those committees. So thank you.
More people die from pedestrian accidents than fires in this town.
Until it doesn't. So Chief, you want to come up and maybe talk about what the police does? Because we hear a lot about enforcement and traffic fatalities, and you can just talk about what you find. And you guys have someone online who wants to? Okay. Go ahead, Chief. I want to hear you first.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees. Also just want to say I had an opportunity last week. I met with Becky and Brianne. We had a really good conversation. I thought that they did an excellent job. I just want to commend them for the work that they did. And you know, as I explained, together we can help them potentially get some of the things taken care of, as we said, with the low-hanging fruit. In regards to what the Dobbs Ferry Police Department does, besides doing our best to keep everyone safe, in specific regards to traffic, which certainly is a major issue. We do have a dedicated traffic unit composed of 2 officers that specifically target a lot of the complaints that do come in. One of the officers is assigned as a liaison to the traffic committee. And what is nice about that unit is that we can kind of operate in about as real time as possible to try to address some of the complaints that come through the traffic committee, where we can affect some of the enforcement. I will say, fortunately, due to some retirements, the traffic unit has been down an officer for the past year. So enforcement on one of the tours has not been evident because that position has not yet been filled. We are actively looking to bring the department back up to full staff. But so people understand, our traffic unit works Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 through to 11s. They rotate, and ideally what they try to do in particular is address those areas where we see issues. In addition, we do our own traffic studies as well. As again, complaints come in so that we can kind of see, is there really an issue? Is there a perception? And, you know, the reality, I understand perception becomes reality to the person on the side of the street. And so we try to bridge an understanding if possible. And so.
So just
we'll
to be
have a-
clear, Chief, just to be clear, do you write tickets for speeding in the village?
We certainly do. We work in conjunction with the Governor Traffic Safety Unit. So we perform as the state is asking for additional enforcement. We were just out 2 weeks ago doing seatbelts, crosswalks, cell phones, as well as speed. So that is stuff that we do in conjunction with the state as well as ourselves. So we are out there quite a bit.
When you say you do traffic studies, are you taking the temperature, you're taking the speed of the streets, and you can tell us the average of those streets? And do you relate that to the traffic committee? Do you provide that information to the traffic committee?
I believe my officer does pass that on to the traffic committee based off the studies we have taken.
He provides the traffic committee with a report for every traffic committee meeting that shows monthly statistics for a number of enforcement categories. One of the things that we've talked a lot about with the police force is failure to yield, which is basically people going through a crosswalk when somebody's in it. And, you know, that's been an area of focus for the traffic committee. We watch, you know, speed tickets. He brings us a spreadsheet every meeting with sort of the rolling monthly statistics on all of the traffic enforcement categories. And we have conversations, and it's always very collegial, and everybody is appreciative of the work the police do. And we, you know, unfortunately have to understand that you've been down a man on and just to be clear, the hours that the chief just gave us are not the only hours that you can get a ticket in Dobbs Ferry.
That is correct. Yes.
That's just the dedicated traffic enforcement unit. We have other cars. Yes, but there's been an open line of communication back and forth, not only about enforcement, but looking for information about pedestrian involved accidents and crashes, whether there's pedestrians involved or not. So there's a good communication between the traffic committee and the police force.
Okay, so I just want everyone to know that they should check the agenda every time, because maybe something will be on, and it will be important that you guys are aware of it and do attend the meetings and let us know how you feel about certain ideas, because you do live there. Look, I live there as well. I live on Ogden, and I could tell you, people don't stop at those stop signs. They roll right through them on Danforth and Ogden, on Beacon Hill and Ogden. They just go right through them. So, and there are speed bumps, but does that really slow people down? I don't know. So, but we will continue to watch it, continue to look at it, and we will make some changes. So I know there are people on, so let them promote them. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
I don't know if we can do something about the air conditioning in here.
Oh, that would be awesome. It's fitzy.
Hi, can you hear me? All right, let me know when you're ready.
We can hear you.
We're ready. Just tell us your
Okay,
name.
sure. It's Ally Moss, 55 Hillside Road. I'm here tonight to share a letter from the Dobbs Ferry Diversity and Human Rights Committee, as well as the Greenberg Pride Planning Committee, which we shared with the board earlier today. But I also, as a resident with kids, albeit on the other side of town, I just wanted to add in my support for all the work that Our Streets is doing. It's incredible, the depth of research that they've undertaken. And, you know, hearing Chief Guevara speak about the research that the police department does, you know, I hope that it might be possible for him to issue a report to share some of these studies and findings and, demographic breakdowns, all of that with the community. I think that would be a fantastic resource if the police department were able to provide that. I will also say, as someone who lives in Riverview Manor, but south of Clinton, that there are 2 additional really dangerous crossings that myself, my husband, and neighbors who commute by train, my kids, once they're old enough to be walking to middle school and then high school, are going to have to traverse. And, as Deputy Mayor Cassell mentioned, there's only so much control we have over Route 9. But I do think it's really important that we continue to collaborate with the state on the crossings at both Colonial Ave and Hatch, especially Hatch, because that's an aqueduct crossing and it is so dangerous. As somebody with a broken ankle at the moment, but who normally is on the aqueduct every day, I can attest to that personally. But in terms of what I came here to share, which is not just from me by any means, I'm just going to read quickly the letter that I submitted on our behalf. Dear Mayor Russillo and esteemed trustees, we are grateful to you and the village for hosting the upcoming 2022 Greenberg Pride Rally at the Waterfront Park on June 25th. We would also like to thank you for considering Village Administrator Melissa Ferraro's proposal for the painting of the sidewalk at Cedar and Main Street in time for LGBTQ+ Pride Month. As you discuss it, we hope you'll incorporate the input of members of Dobbs Ferry's LGBTQ+ and allied community, some of which we've gathered below. We're also attaching the presentation made to you by former trustee Christy Nell last May. We were in support of those efforts then. I'm going to add, we're aware that they're ongoing now. And the visual examples, statistics, and arguments are no less compelling now. So the first matter is the sidewalk proposal mentioned in the agenda this evening. We love the idea of showing support via a sidewalk or crosswalk with LGBTQ+ colors. We believe a crosswalk would be ideal since a sidewalk is visible to pedestrians but not drivers. We know that safety issues have been raised in the past, but many other municipalities around the country have implemented versions of a pride crosswalk, and based on former trustee Nell's research, there have been no safety repercussions in those communities. In order to show full support, regardless of whether it's a crosswalk or a sidewalk, the design needs to feature the newer, more inclusive LGBTQ+ colors in addition to the classic rainbow. There's a few options that include the white, pink, light blue, brown, black stripes representative of solidarity with diverse racial, ethnic, and gender identities, or the new progress flag, which additionally includes intersex representation. Finally, we're eager to hear what the expected longevity of this sidewalk or crosswalk is. We hope it'll be maintained well into the future. Second is the matter of the lights on Cedar and Main, the new, I presume, LED changeable lights. We're aware that the board considered the matter of making the newly acquired lights on Cedar and Main rainbow to reflect Pride for the month of June. We strongly support that idea and are excited to hear that it will be implemented this year. As an annual calendar is created, we encourage the board to enshrine it as the official plan for the month of June and to consult with the village's Human Rights and Diversity Committee on ways to make those plans inclusive and reflective of our village's diversity all year long. Finally, the flags on downtown streets. We sincerely hope the village will consider hanging inclusive pride flags on Cedar and Main Streets, as well as the parts of Broadway and Ashford Avenue that are typically decorated for holidays. For example, American flags for Memorial Day, as currently displayed. Ardsley and Hastings do this every year in a way that reflects clear support to the members of the LGBTQ+ community walking and driving through the area. The absence of such a display in downtown Dobbs Ferry communicates a lack of support. We've identified a site where flags may even be available for only the cost of shipping. We're eager to participate in any process that aligns with the inclusive vision we all have for Dobbs Ferry. We can also suggest LGBTQ+ people and allies within the village who are willing to provide additional consultation. Sincerely, the Greenberg Pride Planning Committee, the Dobbs Ferry Human Rights and Diversity Committee, and the following Dobbs Ferry residents who are part of one or the other: Sophia Zamora, who's a senior at Dobbs Ferry High School, Jess Zonana, Rena DeLevy, myself, and Greta Cowan and June Y, who co-chair the Human Rights and Diversity Committee. And, I'll close with something that stuck in me from what Deputy Mayor Cassell said a few minutes probably half an hour back, talking about the streets, there's always a reason for not doing something, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't get it done. And this is a matter of critical importance to a community within our village that is not always seen, doesn't always feel included, and where we have a real opportunity to show the kind of village that we believe ourselves to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Ally. And I do think it would be a good idea, and Chief, if maybe you could put together a report and we could take a look at it and see what it shows. Okay, anybody else online?
There are four more.
Four more. I just want to say that we haven't even gotten to our really agenda yet. So I'm going to have to start really enforcing that 3-minute rule. So go ahead, promote them.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Can you tell us who you are?
Yes, my name is Blake Jose. I live on Grandview Avenue. My wife and I moved in November of 2020. About 2 weeks after we moved in, my wife was struck by a car on Ashford Avenue and badly injured. She was struck crossing the street because the sidewalk did not continue around our block. And so she had to cross to access the sidewalk on the other side. And a car making a left turn off of Ashford Avenue without any regard for pedestrian traffic struck her in a well-lit crosswalk. Just listening to the presentation by Our Streets, they did an excellent job highlighting the need for sidewalks and the other infrastructure changes. It's become increasingly apparent since my wife's accident, walking around the neighborhood during school time hours. Dobbs Ferry definitely has an aggressive and distracted driving problem. It was good to hear from the police chief. I think increased enforcement during these hours, and particularly on the streets downtown and on the route to Springhurst Elementary, are definitely needed. Walking around the area during those hours, I mean, you can even see it's parents bringing their kids to school that are speeding up and down the streets and running stop signs. So just wanted to share our experience in the hopes that maybe we can prevent somebody else from going through this. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jessica Galen at 333 Broadway. Hi, everyone. I am calling in to share my support of the Our Streets initiative that was shared tonight. And specifically, I want to add my voice as a resident of Broadway at a very busy intersection with two small kids. And we have to dodge in and out of cars zooming past us in multiple directions. I also wanted to log that as the chair of the downtown committee, I think the more that we can do to facilitate and encourage walking and bicycling in the village, the more vibrant our downtown will become, which will yield benefits that radiate back outward. And just to echo the last speaker, I think we need a culture shift around driver responsibility and pedestrian safety in Dobbs to bring about the safe and walkable community that I know we all believe we can have. And I really appreciate Our Streets' leadership on this issue and also their integrity and the time that they've spent to do this very data-driven research. And I also wanted to add, as the chair of the downtown committee, my support for the Pride sidewalk or crosswalk. I think we've seen that a number of other municipalities around the country have made permanent installations of inclusive Pride flags, a part of crosswalks in many different kinds of places. And it's time that Dobbs Ferry stood up for these values for our own community, and particularly, as as these issues become harder and harder for, children who are struggling to be seen in their communities around the country. We want to stand up and let kids know that they're being seen and that we care for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Next.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, this is Ron Vincent and Nancy Kennedy, 8 Pietro Place. I believe we're in courtesy of the floor at this point. It's been a little confusing. We're
Well,
not.
technically, we're really not, but go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, we weren't sure.
I'm sure you folks remember us.
Yes, we do.
Our situation. As of March 8th, that was a great meeting with you guys, and we were given the thumbs up. We were top priority, and things were going to happen. We're going to move along. And it's May 10th, and we found out that there were a couple of weeks ago, or not even maybe 10 days ago, from Melissa that there's a glitch, and nothing has happened, absolutely zero, as far as I know. My question is, since I've been advocating for the cul-de-sac since September, since the hurricane, why wasn't I notified that there was a glitch so I could contact other politicians that could help us with this glitch in the county? We heard absolutely nothing, and the only way we found out is by basically calling Melissa till we reached her. So it's extremely frustrating, actually, on my part. After, as you guys know, we've been to many meetings in person and put in a lot of time to try to solve this flooding problem, and then all of a sudden, I feel a little bit hung out to dry, honestly. So Nancy, you have something to say?
Okay, so we'll try to really be brief, and we appreciate that it's a long running meeting. Well, I did speak with Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, for your help, and understand that the county, that the village has applied to the county for funding to help with the study, and that until that funding comes through from the county, the study cannot begin. So therefore, nothing has been done with the study so to date. So my question is, or my point is that, not being involved in municipal governance and not being a lawyer or anything, I just feel like there's got to be a way around. This is one individual project. The county has rules for the way that they disperse their funds, probably because they don't want somebody starting a project and then running out of money and go running to the county, we need more. But this is a project that has not yet begun. And also it's in-house. So, Mr. Oliveri and other persons working within the village are working on the study for this project. I can't believe that there's not a way for this to begin. There's got to be somebody at the county that can help, that there could be a way around this, that there could be an exception, that we can get, Paul Feiner, or I don't know, get somebody. I don't know, he's not in the county governance for granting, but I'm just saying there has to be a way that we can hold the feet to the fire to the county. It's like, we got to get this thing started. Otherwise, it's going to be June and July. The board's not going to be meeting, or July and August. The bid is going to go out. It's going to be fall. It's going to be early winter. The digging is not going to be begun. The shovel's not going to go to the ground until next spring. It just feels that way to us.
And meanwhile, we have hurricane season starting in 3 weeks.
Okay.
So,
Listen, let me just say this to you. No other board has been working as diligently as we have to get Pietro Place solved.
I know.
That's a fact.
We know.
All right, let me just finish. So, and I know Melissa has been working to get this study done. She's trying to get Westchester County to move along with it. She's spoken to me about it, and we're going to see what we can do with the county to get things moving on it. But I don't want to, again, mislead you and tell you that this is going to be resolved in the near future, because it certainly will not be. We want to explore all avenues as far as getting money to pay for this project. It's very expensive, and you can tell that infrastructure-wise, the village is suffering dramatically, and we have to get as much money as possible to pay for these projects. So I know that it's going to take time, and it's going to,
if there's anything that we can do.
Yes,
as-
you can do
as
that.
residents-
You can write a letter. You can write a letter to Mary Jane Shimsky. You could write a letter to the county executive. You can write letters every single day and send emails every single day to those two people, and they will look into it. So yes, you can contact your local Westchester County legislator, which is Mary Jane Shimsky, and the county executive, who is George Latimer. And you can call them, email them, and send them a letter every day.
Okay,
Okay.
we will do that. But I'm
And-
sorry that it's just a dog on a bone, but this has got to, we have to get this done.
I get it.
somehow. So thank you so much. We
You're
know that
welcome.
you're doing your best and for your time, and hopefully you can go on to the rest of your meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Because this now is courtesy of the floor. That was the last one?
No, this is the last one. Sorry.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, board, and residents. My name is Patrick Williams. I'm a resident of 67 Bel Air Drive, lived in Dobbs Ferry for 42 plus years, in my residence over 30. I just wanted to and I just heard some comments about studies, and I just wanted to bring to the floor, because Mr. Mayor, you said to keep us honest and keep things moving.
I didn't say keep us honest, because we're always honest, but keep it.
Okay. I think somebody else might have said that. Okay, so March 22nd, the board approved two studies. One was Walgrove, and one was for Bel Air Drive for drainage issues. I'm the resident who's suffered several issues with drainage, including washing out my gas service and numerous issues. And over 30 some odd years, the road is full of potholes because the water does not drain. It bubbles up and it just comes out. First, I want to thank Ms. Ferraro and Stephen Trezza for their continued work because they are very helpful. And I realize that we have limited resources and we can only do so much. All I'm asking for is, can we get an update on the engineering study that I believe that Mr. Oliveri is doing? And could we get some type of update there? Since the board approved the study on the 22nd of March, I called in two other sinkholes that have developed. The first one was on April 18th in front of 54 Bel Air Drive, which was plated immediately. Again, thank you to Stephen. And the second was just recently on May 4th at the intersection of Porter and Magnolia, where another sinkhole has developed and was plated. The only thing I'm asking is, can we just get an update on the status of the engineering study? That's all I have.
This is the same issue as the other study. They're both pending approval from the Westchester County to be able to go to commence at this time. So we are getting funding from Westchester County. They've approved it, but we are waiting their go ahead so that we can start the study.
What do you mean? They've approved it? So what do you mean?
We attended a meeting on March 17th and they agreed to give us the funding, but now it has to go to the higher authorities to actually approve it. So the Planning Commission approved the funding, but now we have to wait for the approval from, I don't know who.
Okay, so you know what? You can give me a list of that and I'll contact Mary Jane and she can move us in the right.
Yes, and I've reached out to the Assistant Commissioner of Planning.
Okay.
And I did just now as well.
Okay.
To ask for an update.
And maybe it's not a bad idea to put this, like when we do the village newsletter and we have updates, you could just say that these three projects, although approved by this board, have been pending until the Westchester County. Okay?
That would be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you're absolutely right. And so are the people in Pietro, where information seems to get lost in the shuffle. Certainly, we cannot notify everybody in Pietro Place or on Bel Air what's happening, but we should put it on the website or Facebook, letting people know what's going on. So
that would be much appreciated. And again, thanks to Stephen and Ms. Ferraro. Really appreciate your help, as well as members of the board who approved the move forward with the study. Thank you.
You're welcome. Guys, we're done with the traffic. So if you want to stay, you're certainly welcome for the next 19 more items, or you could leave. You have some? Go ahead.
Thank you.
You could go and bring back the pizza.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you? My name is Candace Treglia. I live at 43 Price Street. I just wanted to talk about the Our Streets thing is like many other Price Street residents. I was a little concerned when I heard some of the proposed changes. One of them that worried me the most was the narrowing of the street, like Matt had mentioned. My vehicle is almost 19 feet long. So currently just trying to pull out of my driveway, it's a hassle if somebody parks directly behind me. I don't have luxury of a garage. So that's not an option for me. But I'm in full support, obviously, of any measures that it takes to keep children safe. I have been one that has called constantly to the police station asking, like, is there anything you could do to monitor the speed? They have come up. They at one point put a speed, I guess, monitor on my lawn. It worked beautifully. I'm right at that middle part of the intersection. I told them, I was like, feel free to keep it here as long as you'd like. The officer had told me that people had actually thought that there was a camera inside of it, which was why they were slowing down. Which leads me to my next thing. I mean, I'm in full support of stop signs on the street or cameras being placed, which would bring in more revenue for people speeding and receiving tickets. So, you know, anything in that respect that would bring cars to a lower speed, you know, is definitely in our support. But the changing of the street design, you know, we moved here because we liked how it was and we felt safe. I walk with my children all the time, you know, up and down the street. We walk on the curb.
So let me ask you, you walk every day, all day. Why wouldn't you want
Well,
to?
we don't walk every day, all day. I
know,
have
but
3
why-
children, so
I know,
that's
but-
not
But
possible.
why wouldn't you want a sidewalk?
Why would I want a
Why
sidewalk?
would you not want a sidewalk?
I moved from the Bronx.
Right?
I didn't want the city feeling. I moved here because it's the suburbs and I like the feeling of just more mellow, more quiet. To me, sidewalks feel very city-ish.
Okay.
So
let me
if
just
I
tell you,
wanted-
I mean, they built the sidewalks in Ogden to go to Rivertown Square, right? And I have to say that it's encouraged so many people to get out and walk, and you see people walking around, and it seems, and I know people do speed up and down Ogden, but there doesn't seem to be any traffic accidents there. But
No,
you,
in Price Street, there have, knock on wood, there have been no traffic accidents on Price Street. And I mean, we have a lot of passing through with people, you know, I walk my dog all the time and I've had people curse me out when I tried to cross the street because I don't know, I guess it was infringing on how fast I can go down the block. But I've been fine and I've been safe all this time walking on the curb. My children are the same way. I mean, but like any other paranoid parent, I don't really let my children walk to school. It's not something I personally feel comfortable doing. So, I mean, that's just me, but I'm fine with, you know, the curb is the curb. To be quite honest, some of the sidewalks, they're broken, they're, you know, all over the place. I've tripped more on a sidewalk than I have on a curb.
Okay.
So,
all right.
thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else a courtesy of the floor? Sure. Come on up now.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. John Scroop from 64 Seneca Street, the gentleman with the huge sinkhole in his backyard. Mayor, I think you've seen it.
I have.
I think Melissa, you came to visit. Major concern for me and my wife is the process in terms of how this is being taken care of. As the mayor knows, we had an excavation company came and dug away the damages to the culvert and then placed huge boulders to maintain the property so it wouldn't fall into the creek anymore, which is great. But when I look out my back window, all I see is this terrible eyesore of a open area where the creek is running through, where a culvert or pipe should be, and it's not there. And we're very concerned about the liability and the danger to young children or anyone who decides they want to push away the orange mesh fencing and potentially fall and fracture their skull or worse. So my wife and I are constantly concerned with what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. I spoke to you, Mayor, back in January, and you were very quick to send the engineer over, Dan Peluso and Steve Trezor, who reassured me that I hadn't been forgotten and that work was proceeding. And the two things that Dan said was that, number one, Mrs. Group, we have to seek permits from the state to do, I believe what he said was further digging in that area so we could stabilize that ground area. And then I believe he also said, then there's the process of ordering and delivering the respective pipe that needs to be placed there and sealed. When I spoke to Melissa, the only thing I shared with you, Melissa, that I became a little concerned was she said, well, the study is going to take place and Seneca Street, your property, is part of that study. So instead of what Dan said was that we're going to move along by April, I spoke to Melissa the first week in April, and she said, Mrs. Group, this is going to be a 2 or 3 month study, and your property is part of that. So you'll have to check back. I'm extremely concerned about the liability and the danger. And what Melissa mentioned, and I hope you were mistaken. So, one of the options might be that property of yours stays open. I said, that cannot stay open because then I would be living and the village would be living with a liability every day. And when I bought that property in 1987, the village had an easement over this culvert, which I knew, but the property was solid. I've now lost with this hole 15 by 17 feet and 8 to 10 feet deep. I will not tolerate that be left open. That has to be sealed, covered. The pipe has to be put down, then it has to be sealed. And there were 7 trees cut down on my property so the cranes could get to it. I had a real estate agent come over and he told me what my property was worth before he saw the culvert. It's a $200,000 difference.
Okay, let's see, Melissa, Laura Lee, can you shed light on this?
I certainly can. The easement was originally in the name of the county of Westchester. When Route 9 became a state highway, that easement and the culvert and the facility and the entirety of it passed to the state of New York. So much like we're trying to encourage other individuals to contact their county legislators, we would encourage you to contact your state legislators because we cannot get the state's attention as to the danger. The stabilization was never meant to be permanent. The stabilization was meant as a stopgap matter. And what we're trying to do is get the attention of the state of New York State DOT, because this is their responsibility. They need to design and replace, and I know she was there, but we cannot seem to stress upon them the importance of getting this done. So anything that you can do to contact your state representatives would be very helpful.
I'm not sure who in the village said this to me. They did say, of course, that the state now is saying that's not our issue, it's the village, and the village say no, it's the state. But someone in the village said to me, this is true. We're in a fight with the state.
We are.
That may go on for a while, but your property is going to be restored, and the fight will go on after that. Not before.
I don't know
It's
who
not
would
going to
say
be
that.
resolved. I never heard it was going to be resolved before my property gets repaired.
We can't enter upon an easement that doesn't belong to us. This easement is in the name of the state of New York.
The village is not in charge of the easement.
We are not a party to the easement. The county created the easement on your property. And then in the 20s, when New York State took over Route 9, the facility and the easement passed to the Department of Transportation. We have the historical documents. We've sent them the information and the photographs. We're waiting now because now it's in the hands of the legal department. So we're not sure where this is going to come out, but we may end up having to take enforcement action.
So I've written a letter myself, about 2 weeks ago, I wrote a letter to, I think Andrew Stewart Cousins. I wrote a letter to her 2 weeks ago, stressing upon her the importance of this. And we're going to follow up with her office as well. But I did write a letter to her to bring it to her attention. And I'll have a contact person. there.
So when the state engineer was there, she was not a friendly person. But she did say to the village representatives, now you are checking, you do an evaluation on the easement, correct? And someone said yes. So who is responsible to check that easement out on some sort of a regular?
New York
basis?
State Department of
Well,
Transportation.
The village it's your responsibility.
I'm in an active conversation with the engineer, and now she's handed it off to the attorney's office because we've done the research. We've given them the documents they need. It
No, I'm sorry.
clearly was part of the appropriations the county gave to them. It's a single structure. We had somebody walk through it, produce documents showing that it's a single infrastructure structure that goes from your property.
That we, you and I are we have a tremendous liability on our hands while that property remains not restored. Someone may injure themselves, and who's going to be sued? I'm going to be sued because it's my property, and you're going to be sued. No?
No.
Oh, so I'll be sued.
No, you won't be sued. It's a state. It's a state obligation.
We can do this.
This is not.
Let's just, somebody, go ahead. You want to say something?
All right, so my name's Kevin Harden. I own the property at 57 Seneca, which is adjacent to John's property. So just to step back a second, what John was saying earlier was who's responsible for inspecting that culvert on an annual basis?
New York State Department of Transportation.
They never do.
I've owned the property since 1987 as well. I've never, ever seen anybody there inspecting that property. So there's negligence there.
Yes.
And there'd be negligence also if a child, and I have my grandchildren at my home very often, and John has his as well, were to fall into that spot. And we were told several months ago that it's a state responsibility, but the village was going to proceed to fix the problem and then deal with the state separately. We were told that.
We have fixed the problem.
Well,
No, we have not restored it to where you wanted it to be restored, but we fixed the problem. We have stabilized it. We have stabilized the problem.
So it's like a house, Mayor, that's on fire, and you put the fire out in one part of the house.
That's not even
and
close
it's still
to the
burning.
proper, that's not even close to the proper analogy. We have stabilized the problem. We are doing what we can do. You can't expect us to pay $200,000, $300,000 more on property that we don't even have a right to. We have to go through the legal process as well. We will do what we can. You do what you can. I will give you contact information to the state officials to contact.
We could use your help with this to get their attention. We could use your help.
So again, we were told last fall,
That was
it would
then.
take a
This
couple of
is
months.
now.
Oh,
You've got to.
Excuse
you've
me,
got to
I'm
get
sorry,
this-
but you can't be telling us something last fall and then tell us something at the beginning of April, that there's going to be a study that's going to be completed in 2 months, John, was that correct? Is that true? Does that?
That's even started.
The study, every person I've spoken to, I've said that we don't know the amount of time, but it will be several months for the study. Yes, and it is part of the study that is part of the grant funding that is being provided by the county, which is now being held up for them to give us the official go-ahead to start the study.
So
And I did explain this to you, that we are still proceeding with the study, even though this part of the culvert is actually a state responsibility. We are proceeding and continuing with the study to see what can be done. So we're not leaving it.
So who's
the
responsible
state.
for maintaining Route 9 If there's
State.
potholes and there's issues like that on route with, or sewer issues or things like that, is that the state or is that the village?
State.
Who does the work?
State.
State Department of Transportation.
I've seen the village out there quite often repairing the street.
Not on Route 9 you haven't.
Not on Route 9.
Let me just say this, I've been to your house when this happened. I've returned your calls. We've spoken on the phone when this happened. I've written a letter to Andrew Stewart Cousins myself. I've been in contact with the attorneys, and I have to follow what the advice of the attorney is. The advice of the attorney is to wait, put pressure on them politically, and get an answer. I have to follow the attorney's advice. I cannot put village resources, we cannot put village resources on something that's not our may not be our responsibility. So we've done what we can. You can do more. We can do more. I know Shari says she has some people that she can contact. She will do so. If anybody else on the board has people, they will do so as well. But we've stabilized the process. And I just we can't continue on this. If you have a problem offline, call me, call Melissa, and we'll try to see what we can do.
Who was responsible? I'm sorry, Mayor, but who was responsible to stabilize the property?
The state of New York.
So did the state do all that work?
No, we did it.
We had to do it because they refused to act, and we were worried about liability and
Okay.
the importance of
So
North
we're
Brook
just asking the same thing.
in the watershed. We're approving it tonight in order to seek reimbursement from the state. So we're going to present them with the bill.
If I may, in addition to this, my day job is I do work for the county, and I know how frustrating it is to wait for things, but part of the frustration that people have comes from the fact that they haven't been talking to the right people from the start. So I think the advice has been that if you contact Andrea Stewart Cousins' office, Tom Abenanti's office, the state's office as constituents, you will get a response. They will respond to you because you're constituents and clearly spell out what the situation is and what the ask is. Because sometimes what happens, and I see this at the county level too, people write very long emails and there's no ask in it. There's nothing that really could propel anyone to action. So you as citizens have power to reach out to your elected officials as constituents. It sounds like the village has been trying to do what it can do to keep things,
It's very concerning.
okay, but it's not, if the village isn't where it isn't.
But it's
the
very
power.
concerning that
It isn't where they're not the deciders. You know what I mean? You have to reach to the people who can actually do things, and that is your state
Okay,
representatives.
but it's very concerning that 6 months or longer after this condition first appeared, that this is the first time we're being told that we have to deal with the state.
I'm not telling you that you have to deal with this.
No.
I'm just suggesting that can help you get
Like I said,
results.
I've written a letter. We have.
But
sent-
no one's asked us to do that.
Okay. Come up to the front, and this is the last minute that I could spend on this.
The decision that you made to stabilize the property at your cost, and then you're going to deal with this, send the bill to the state. Why is that not happening with putting the pipe down and covering the ground and sending the bill to the state as well?
I think that the stabilization was not about your property. The stabilization was about the egress of the water that affects a very large percentage of the properties in Dobbs Ferry. So because the section under your property was at risk for backing up the whole stormwater system for a large part of the community, we felt it was necessary to deal with that issue at that location. This was not about your property. This was about a large piece of Dobbs Ferry losing stormwater egress. It happened on your property, unfortunately, and that's why that work occurred. So the stabilization component was not about your sinkhole. It was about contending with stormwater system. And we understand the issue. And so, obviously we have to act on an emergency issue like that doesn't just affect your property, but affects potentially hundreds of others. That's why we made the emergency expenditure, even though it was the state's responsibility at that time.
Okay, we'll see what we can do. We haven't forgotten you, and believe me, we want this resolved, not as much as you, I'm sure, but we want it resolved as well. Okay. Let's move on. I want to maybe get the library issues resolved so we can move you along. So let's see if we could move, if we could address.
Mayor, Valerie's on as well.
Sorry. All right, let's talk about the grant updates then. Melissa, I'm leaving it to you.
Yes, thank you. Valerie is actually online. She's going to give some information because the village has received information about possible grant funding that we can apply for. The application is due June 1st. I've been working with Valerie and Anthony on trying to see if we can utilize this. However, there are some hurdles that doing so would represent, which are similar to this conversation that we just had. So Valerie, if you want to elaborate on that, please.
Sure. So I'm just going to kind of I will make this, I'll make it quick. So as you know, the village is undertaking a number of stormwater studies at this point, right? And I'm referring to Pietro Place study and the Virginia Avenue study, as well as I know there's work being done in order to rehabilitate the wall collapse along Ashford Avenue. And then you also have the Wall Grove Avenue work and then the Bel Air Drive work. So there are two particular grant programs that some of this work that's ongoing could be eligible for. And so I just wanted to highlight both of them for you and then talk about the pros and cons of each of them, and then get your feedback on which ones you would like the village to pursue. So the first really deals with this advanced assistance grant. The advanced assistance grant is due June 1st. What this requires is advanced assistance grants will fund for design work for projects, specifically identified in your studies that are taking place now. It will not fund for emergency repairs, so the Ashford Wall project would not be eligible for it. However, what it does do is that you would be able to fund for these studies. And then once the studies are complete, the part of the requirement is if the federal government funds those studies, then you would be obligated to implement, you're undertaking the studies, they would fund the design of some of the recommendations in the studies. Once they fund that piece, what would be obligated by the village is to actually move forward with some of the implementation of the design work. The difficulty with this particular grant, while it would allow for example, some of the recommendations that come out of Pietro Place or Virginia Avenue study to be undertaken, there is a little bit of a time lapse concerning these grants. So while some of these two studies, we talked to Anthony, both studies are anticipated to be about 6 months to conclude. But the grant themselves, if we get this advanced assistance grant, design would not be able to begin until 2023, the spring 2023. Then we would be able to, again, apply for this additional funding, which is called BRIC or FMA funding, which would then allow for the construction of those particular projects. And that would not, those grants would go in the fall of 2023. So therefore, implementation would not begin in spring of 2024. In speaking with Anthony, based upon the study he's undertaking now, and the design work that could take place, theoretically, some of these projects would be able to move forward if you didn't move through the grant assistance program at the spring of 2023. So there is a 1-year delay. That being said, there is that possibility that if one study, because the village might not be planning to undertake, once you get the results of both studies, implementation on everything all at once. So there is that ability to maybe identify maybe one of the studies to move through this program and the other study that the village would consider moving through the normal cycle. So that's the first grant program. The second grant program deals with this FEMA public assistance. This one is typically when you have a hurricane, and which the village did in Hurricane Ida, there's a 60-day window to basically report all, destruction or issues that took place as a result of Hurricane Ida. But due to the nature of the retaining wall, and the village was unaware that Hurricane Ida actually made the retaining wall along Ashford Avenue unstable. So that came to light after the 60-day window. There is an ability to try to request for this public assistance funding within what basically at the after fact of the 60-day window closing, but we would have to submit documentation basically acknowledging and demonstrating that this project was related to Hurricane Ida. It is disaster related and not necessarily deferred maintenance or some other unrelated issue. You already have a study that was undertaken by Anthony, and there has been some geotech work. And we believe that we would be able to put together basically documentation to set forth and identify that this was indeed Ida related and request that the federal government move you into this program. If it moves into this program, then the construction or the reconstruction of the wall would be funded. This is a reimbursable grant. It does allow for emergency repairs, and it does allow you to move through the normal process. There are some contingencies dealing with contract provisions that the village would need to look at to make sure that as you move through the process that you meet those contract provisions. But other than that, this particular grant project would not delay the implementation of the work that's being done for the Ashford Avenue wall.
So it seems to me that that's, for lack of a better word, a no-brainer. We should
Right,
do that.
that's what we think too. That one in particular, we need to submit as soon as possible. So we can begin that work immediately. The second one is a little bit more of, decisions that the board is going to have to make in terms of timing.
So would we have to identify a project now in order to?
No,
Okay.
no, what we'd be able to do is identify one of the studies or both studies saying that these studies were being undertaken and that we would like to get funded for design work on some of the recommendations that would come out of those studies. Anthony's able to give, he has a general idea of what some of the work would need. And so we can provide some of those estimates as well as like general summaries of the work that would be undertaken. But the concept is that once the study is done and a project gets identified, then we can go through the design through FEMA funding.
So if I heard you correctly earlier, and please tell me if I'm wrong, if they fund the design, we are obligated to do the work on our own checkbook.
You can then
So if
apply for a
they fund
secondary.
the design, you're obligated to implement, but we can go for additional funding through FEMA to actually pay for the construction of whatever it is that's being designed.
But that's not guaranteed.
That's
to
not
come
guaranteed.
through.
That's correct.
So if we were to do this on a project that turned out to be astronomically expensive, then we could wind up on the hook for an astronomical expense. Yes?
Well, not exactly, because you would be able to, it's a design recommendation. And if and design and cost go hand in hand, it may not be recommended by our engineer or our architect or whoever does this work that we undertake the work. It has to be a recommendation, like an insurmountable cost. It cannot be recommended.
Okay, so
by definition.
But implementation is required. So what does implementation mean in that context?
That's a great question.
Well, I just asked him.
So I think in terms of, when we were talking to Anthony, Anthony would we wouldn't necessarily have the costs for whatever implementation, but what we would identify is that, for example, like the Pietro Place study, let's just say we decided to move that through the program. The Pietro Place study would be identified as whatever recommendations come out of this, we would pick one or two to move forward through design phase and then clearly implementation.
I see. So we would have
a better estimate of what that would look like, what the cost estimates would be, but it would then allow for the village to basically get funded for the design as well as potentially the construction.
So just so I understand this. So let's say that comes back, it's going to cost $2 million to fix all of Pietro Place. But the engineer says, well, for $1 million, we could fix half of it or whatever. We can decide to do that.
I believe so. That's the way it sounds like, because we're not really, as part of this initial application for this advanced assistance, we're not identifying the exact work that's going to be undertaken because we haven't finished the study yet. And they recognize that. So there is that flexibility, but the real issue is that if we go through this process, the village cannot undertake any work that's going to be associated with what they would ultimately be seeking funding for. So, and it would take longer. So that's the real issue with this particular grant project.
Maybe there are some projects that we wouldn't get to.
I would say, so that's more of like a project that you're thinking of doing, but it isn't an urgent project. So if there was something that we were thinking of doing, if we were thinking of building a wall around Dobbs Ferry, for example, then that could be something, right? But it's not for an emergency where people already have been waiting 6 months for something to then make them wait till 2024. Is that what you said? Like,
Because the temptation is that that's likely to be an expensive project, so you'd want to do it. But if you don't know that you're going to get reimbursed, that's a big risk. So
is there a project that you guys, your engineers, the planners think that would fit into that category where it could maybe wait until 2024 and it's not falling apart, or
everything's falling apart?
Well, I would.
You know, maybe, what about they assemble a list for us with some criteria of the various projects that are, you know, sort of floating around, and what the timeframe for the studies, the complexity of the project, some sense about, you know, times, the schedule for the work and the cost and some things like that. So we can just really start to think about all these holistically.
But the deadline is
Just
like
for
immediate.
clarification, Valerie, it has to be a hazard mitigation project, correct?
Yes.
So that's the problem, is a lot of the projects that we have pending, we know that they're mitigating hazards because we know the hazards exist. So trying to determine something that's not in a situation like the studies that have been approved, I don't know if we can come up.
It's hard to triage.
What about the High Street Bridge, the overpass there? Would that fall into this?
I don't know.
Because that's a hazard.
No, I think the real issue is it should be part of your hazard mitigation plan, right? And this is really focused on stormwater and flood mitigation.
Got it. Okay.
So
Well, what about, and we talked about this and I asked about it and you said, well, that's really expensive, Matt. What about applying for grant for a village-wide stormwater study so that we can actually anticipate where the next break is going to be and try to triage the whole system rather than just playing whack-a-mole?
Well, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, would that fit the criteria?
I think we have to have an identifiable issue that
We don't have an identifiable stormwater.
I don't know.
issue?
I think that we could apply under that theory, but it may be too broad
being on the river
to get the funding.
I think that we could list numerous areas where there are significant vulnerabilities in the village to stormwater, where they haven't already created an emergency. So that whether we could do it between now and the end of the month, or is this the second grant, Valerie?
no, this one is the June 1st grant. So this one is due June 1st.
And I don't know, realistically, we're not really going to be able to work on all of these by 2024. So I don't know if there's anything that you can feel.
So this isn't this has to just be stormwater. So it's not like we could talk about burying wires or anything. Okay.
No. But what we can do is I can go back to Anthony and have him take a look at what he anticipates, you know, potentially coming out of these the couple different studies. And maybe there's a particular project that might not be, you know, clearly we completely understand that you want to deal with the issues as soon as possible, but maybe there's a component that, you know, is, you know, in terms of priority might be a little bit lower in priority. And that's something that we could maybe move through, or potentially that grant cycle, which wouldn't be implemented until 2024.
Okay.
I know that 2-year wait times is it seems like a very, very long time, but I think the other element of this is that even if we were not to undertake the grant funding, would it take us that long anyway? And so I know the folks at Pietro Place hate to hear that, but if it's 6 months after the county approves the funding for the study, so 6 plus a few, I don't know, some amount of time, then there's design work for the repairs, another at least 6 months. So we're talking 14 months at this point. And then 2 months for 3 months for bidding and negotiating. Time for us to analyze these things. Alternatives, you add another 6 months, you're at 20 months.
Yeah.
Are we there anyway?
Right.
So if
The
that's the case,
only-
why wouldn't we apply for this grant?
The only thing I would add is that none of that work could start until after we were awarded the funding. So there would be at
So the
least an
2024
extra
is
year. I think
plus.
we're estimating an extra year
Yeah.
on being able to actually have the project complete, versus if we were able to proceed now, waiting for the county, waiting for the study, proceeding in that way. What I can do, I can meet with Valerie and Anthony again. We can rack our brains about take Anthony's expert opinion as to what aspects of the studies that he's going to do could be focused outside of the study. And then we can advise the board if we can identify anything before the June 1st.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do that. But I do think the FEMA one is, you should just move forward with the FEMA one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
Do we need to vote on that?
Can I say something, please? One, there was issues with the waterfront. I don't remember what they're called, rebar or something. Down on the edge, it's always having issues with the way it's been set up from when they installed the parks. I don't know if that's something that you could do to look at to apply for with this grant. And then I don't think that we should, I think everyone's in agreement now, but maybe just to say it explicitly, I don't think that we should delay the Pietro Gould Park study any further. I think it needs to move as expeditiously as possible. And if we can get grant money somewhere somehow, great, but otherwise this has been an ongoing problem and we can't keep waiting and putting Band-Aids on things.
Right, and just to be clear, that so the public also understands that the study is definitely ongoing and it will move forward without this grant, because the grant is really focused on the next phase, the design work for any sort of recommendations. But that being said, we can definitely follow up with Anthony, as Melissa said, and see if there's even a portion of like the Virginia Avenue study or the Pietro Place study that the board might want to consider, again, peeling off and then still implementing some of the more higher priority projects that come out of that study. And then some of the other projects we can potentially move through and anticipate a 2024 cycle.
What's the possible grant value?
So there, for the advanced assistance, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a maximum at this point in time in terms of the grant, the advanced assistance, because that's not going to be a very costly product. But the actual implementation of construction, I don't have that information, because those are two other grant programs that we'd have to seek.
It's also like an important factor though, because you're talking about 50,000 versus 500,000 or something. It's really different.
The understanding from speaking with the county is that the grant funding under the grant for the June 1st deadline is could be 100% and no contribution, which is why they're seeking applicants, because the quick deadline, they don't have a lot of applicants for these grants. So that was the information that we got from the county.
Even if it was $1 million? I'm not just kind of what you're saying. I just find that unbelievable.
There wasn't a cap.
There was no cap on the value.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next discussion, which is the open meetings law requirements. I know we have a memo from Laura Lee.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about it?
You want to jump to that one before the library stuff? Okay.
Yeah,
No,
let's just move along.
no
Getting
problem.
myself confused.
Okay, you have my memo, which is describing that unexpectedly, we never know when this is coming. A new provision of open meetings law 103-A has been added, which is a discretionary right by municipalities and public boards and agencies like the school board to permit participation of board members remotely using video conferencing for, quote, extraordinary circumstances. If you are interested in exercising your discretion to be able to add this as one of the tools in your quiver to continue to access board participation remotely, you must do so by local law. So before I could draft a local law, I was seeking to get guidance from the board as to whether this was something they'd be interested in. It does not narrow the right under the existing open meeting laws provisions, which says that a board member may participate remotely by video conferencing if that location is noticed and accessible to the public. So it doesn't limit the right that already exists. What it does is it provides this second layer with different conditions to meet. It is a lot of language. It does not move the bar forward all that much. Your local law would need to provide not examples of what extraordinary circumstances are, but the local law would involve how to process whether something is an extraordinary circumstance or not an extraordinary circumstance.
Okay, so it seems to me that it just makes sense to give ourselves that availability. I mean, do we all feel that way, right?
Yeah, it does. And the guidance I would need from you is whether you would like to provide this local law to also provide the opportunity to your other public bodies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Related.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll get a local law before you. It does not affect the right for you to have video conferencing under the governor's current statewide public health emergency. Any public health emergency would have its own set of conditions. And you currently have the right to participate, as we have two members participating tonight, under the governor's action, and that will continue. There's a run out period right now that is scheduled through June 8th. We never know, the governor could extend that further, especially in light of the fact that in order to exercise the right under the new open meeting laws provision, there's not a lot of time to get all that done before June 8th. And again, you don't lose the right under the existing provision. This would just be another action. So.
Okay, we're ready to move along on that. You can prepare that and we'll go from there.
I will. I'll bring it forward for the next meeting.
Next item is the, first, for the record, I just have to acknowledge receipt of an email from residents of Price Street who had sent in a petition, which we did receive. I also want to acknowledge a receipt from an email from Salvatore Papa, also regarding Price Street. And I also want to acknowledge receipt of an email from and I think Ali Moss read it, referenced it, but we did receive it concerning the Pride celebration. So now that we're at that discussion, I think, and everybody can correct me, we already decided to do the lights. Is that correct?
That's correct. During the March 8th meeting, there was a discussion regarding the issue, I think that was raised last year prior to my starting here, about the crosswalks for Pride Month, and there was some concerns from the police chief regarding the safety. So in lieu of the crosswalks, there was a proposal to have the lights outside on Main Street changed for Pride Month and for any other significant event. Based upon that discussion, it was my impression that that was the decision for Pride. There was a request to bring this back to the board. So we did do some pricing. Now, this pricing was from a few weeks ago for 6 different colors. I did look up the Unity Rainbow to make sure I had the 6 colors correct. Stephen called the company and the cost is about $2,500. That may increase now since we are close to Pride Month. For example, I did look at the link that was provided by Ms. Moss for those flags, and they're out of stock already.
Really?
So if the board wants to proceed with the painted sidewalk, which I believe will be in front of, on Cedar, in front of the recreation sign, that we would have to order pretty quickly and hope, and then we would let the board know if we don't have all of the colors that are necessary. Again, my apologies. I thought the discussion with the lights, that was it. So I would have brought this to the board much sooner, so we had more sufficient time to order the proper paint colors.
Okay, so how do we?
Can I speak on this, please?
I'm sorry.
Stephen, where are we getting the paint? It's special paint so that it doesn't
lift
And they don't
up.
have it at readers.
Oh, no, no.
I
No,
think that's probably part of
be
the
real, we
So
have-
they have everything
How
at readers.
permanent do we want this?
Right.
If we want it permanent, then we have to go with the expensive paint because that's made for that. If you just want to have it for Pride Month, you could probably do it with colors from readers, or you could do it with chalk or something else. So that might be.
Okay, so let's take a step back.
Can I-
We're just discussing this. I was just gonna say, what's the general feeling of having the crosswalk?
Not the crosswalk, the
That's the
sidewalk.
crosswalk.
Can I speak for a second, please? Because I'm the one that requested that we have this discussion. So it was discussed last year, and Christy had done the presentation on the sidewalk, and there was a lot of pushback from the chief of police about safety concerns, and the consensus of the board at that time was that we shouldn't do the crosswalk because of those safety concerns raised by the chief. I don't know if he still has those same safety concerns. We haven't discussed it since then. Now that other communities have had rainbow crosswalks for a longer period of time, but assuming that's still true, we had discussed at that time doing an alternative to the crosswalk, which was, as Melissa described it, the painted sidewalk, but for the plaza, I think, where the announcement sign is. And it wasn't supposed to be just related to Pride. It was supposed to be the unity flag. I think the conversation was inspired by doing something with Pride, but it was supposed to be more inclusive than that and something more permanent than just for June. And I think that, Ally raising and the committees that submitted that letter, that there's an even newer flag with intersex in it. I would suggest that we just use that flag because we definitely want to be an all-inclusive community. And I'm not sure that, I think drivers will still be able to see that crosswalk because it's in such a prominent area when you're pulling up by Sushi Mike's from any of the directions. So I think it could still be a good compromise. I can't see the gallery, so I don't know if the chief's there, if he still has the same position on the crosswalk, or if that's something that we could revisit too, but it definitely was supposed to be something longer than June and more permanent, and that's what I would be advocating for this evening.
Any other thoughts on the sidewalk versus crosswalk versus nothing?
I agree with the crosswalk. I did last year. I thought it was a good proposal. I defer to the committee, diversity committee on what the right colors organization of that is, but I'd like to make it permanent. I agree with Trustee Sullivan about that, and I think the more inclusive, the better.
So you said crosswalk.
Crosswalk, yes.
Yeah, I would.
Crosswalk.
I mean, I think I understand why that there could be concerns if there's something, but it's done in so many communities now. And so I would like to see the crosswalk because I think it will make more of a statement. I think we were talking the one by like the other side of Sushi Mike's, right? Like that one that goes across.
Originally,
There's
we
the
were talking
crosswalk
about
in front of
the
Sushi
library.
Mike's to the old library.
Okay. But I mean, I think it would be something that would really make a statement, and it shouldn't be something that's in chalk. That's just there for when we're having the Pride celebration, but it will be a symbol of welcoming to people in the village.
The only comment I have about the crosswalk versus the sidewalk is with, and I guess it'd be a question for Steve, is with cars traversing over the painted crosswalk, would it be less durable or less than the sidewalk would?
If we're asking Steve,
Let Steve answer.
I had another question for Steve
Oh,
that
okay.
goes in with that. Is
Yeah.
there a traction issue with the cars going over that much paint?
Yes, there would be. But if you want paint, it's gonna fade. So if we do permanent, we'll have to get a company to come in and heat it down. That'll make it permanent. What we use, we'll be using street paint, so that'll be fade, it'll fade.
But you could paint that every 2 years, right?
We'll be painting it every year.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may, I was in Great Barrington last weekend and their crosswalks have faded tremendously. They haven't sort of
I
spruced
know.
them. and
That's the
updated
problem
them.
that we're gonna be faced
But
with.
my question was slightly different than that. Like, I assumed that the crosswalk would fade, but would you have the same fading? Would it be the same amount on a sidewalk where people are just walking versus, cars going every day.
It may last longer on the sidewalk, but still gonna fade with the weather and the rain and everything.
Chief,
Paint my house too.
come on up and tell us how you feel.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. Yes, we had discussed this last year, and I do feel very important. I want people to understand, I think Dobbs Ferry is a wonderful community. Inclusion is very important to me, and I want this village to be as welcoming as possible. I understand that other communities do that, and maybe they, at this point, fortunately, have no issues. I still have some reservations, in my opinion, that especially I just listened to numerous residents concerned about vehicle and traffic issues. And I want drivers paying attention to the road and not looking at other things. That is just currently, it's not that we can't circle back and talk about this at another time. I'm always open to that. That's just my opinion.
I will say this, if it's a rainbow crosswalk, then maybe drivers would actually stop while people are crossing, and it wouldn't be that I have to stand in the middle of Broadway and say, hey, I'm walking here.
Or they see the crosswalk and nothing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just try to move this along. So again, this is not an official vote. Nothing's binding at this time. All those who are in favor of a permanent crosswalk, just raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so that's unanimous. Okay. All right, so make it happen.
Can you make the crosswalk like the unity flag thing instead of just the rainbow for pride? Because I think it's important to be.
Yeah, we'll have to-
It's gotta be
less.
permanent. It should be everything.
We're gonna have to see what colors are available at this point, so Stephen can find out tomorrow. And if there are any issues, then we'll let the board know via email.
I mean, yeah, the colors for the paints is one issue, but that would probably be an issue for the sidewalk and the crosswalk.
No, it would, but I mean, the extra paint, it will increase the price. So I'll
I
let the
always
board
asked,
know
I
what
had
the price
asked
is.
for the unity flag from the get-go, so the price of 2,500 wasn't for the unity flag. it was
No,
just for
when
the
I
rainbow.
looked up Unity flag, it had the same 6 colors that Stephen, so maybe Google was wrong.
Oh, yeah, because it has
But
the
that
brown
was-
and black and additional
like
colors,
brown
yeah.
and-
When
Okay.
I looked up Unity flag
Okay.
and that was
It's
the
fine.
colors that was
It's
in
fine.
it.
Okay.
And then I guess,
Even
I
if
guess
you
let's
remember the
move on
rainbow, it would
this.
be
Do
good.
we need a motion on this or no?
Stephen, can you also like find out if there's additional costs for making it on the sidewalk with the heating process or whatever you were talking about?
And can I just clarify the timing? The colors of the
Yeah.
lights will be for Pride Month, and you're looking at doing a permanent installation. It doesn't have to be by June 1st. Is that?
So
I think that's fair.
June 25th, by the time that we have the Pride Rally.
I'd love to have it done in June, but it doesn't have to be June 1st.
Right. June.
Okay, let's move on to discussion number 6, which is a body worn cameras. So we do have a memo from the chief. And let me just say that as part of our, as part of the police reform task force, one of the findings was that we did want the police to wear body cameras. And so, we've been moving this along, and I think the chief has come across, I think, 3 options that are for us to decide, I guess, which way we want to move on it. We do have your memo, chief, so you don't have to go over every single little item on it. But there is a big difference in price. And one of the things I just want to ask you is, it seems that 2 of them are held on by magnets, and one of them is actually like sewn into the uniform. Is that correct?
That is correct. Again, this comes from towards the end of the last month, I received information that a grant was opening up. So I was just looking to see if I get some help from the board on whether we apply for it and what would happen if we get all or some or no funding from the grant. So that what I wanted to present were just 3 different options of 3 manufacturers. So you can kind of see the different specs. Please.
Chief, what is, I mean, if forget funding, what between these 3 cameras is your department's preference?
I have looked at all 3. I'm actually leaning towards the middle body worn. I find that their product is unique in how it is integrated into the into the uniform,
Yeah.
which would make it much more difficult for it to fall off during an altercation.
Is that the one that once one is activated, the others get activated as well?
That does have the technology, yes.
Yeah,
It does sense other body cameras of the same model. The highest quote that we had also does the same.
And I just have one more question. So the grants that are available, do you know what the amounts are that they're?
They're
giving?
just, when I looked at the grant, they are just open to any law enforcement agency that is looking to implement a body worn camera program. So since we do not have one, I thought that we at least would qualify for that requisite.
I think that to answer your question, we came to an agreement about doing this with the police reform discussion. Not only now, but it was decided many years ago to implement that. So, it's been a long time coming. I think it would be wonderful if you got grant funding, but I think we're behind implementing this irrespective of additional money.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can I just, it wasn't an agreement to do it. It was a recommendation in the police reform task force. And I think the holdup has always been the cost because it's over $250,000. So having grant money to fund it, especially since we had body worn cameras and then they went by the wayside and technology advances so quickly. The chief, is this to outfit all patrol officers or something else?
Correct. If I was to implement this, in my opinion, I would have every officer be assigned their own individual body worn camera for evidence purposes, chain of custody. I would not want to be swapping them out as officers come in off of shift. That leads to them getting banged up and damaged. So tracking purpose, accountability, it's better that each officer has their own.
And so this pricing is for the 27 officers?
This, I believe I have it for 30.
Okay. And then how does it work if you do the one that's embedded into the uniform and you can wash it? I mean.
No, so what's interesting about their product, and because we would be able to kind of negotiate with them, we may be able to get better terms, but they will create a pocket. So the camera then is removable at the end of tour as they change uniforms. So that as of right now, they have quoted at least 2 outer garments. Possibly we could leverage something better. There's some other options that, not specific to this, but dealing with our in-car cameras, that would be another project potentially, because we have to constantly replace them, and that's a different company. So I didn't really want to dive into, throw a whole bunch of potential money things at you, but theoretically, this would be another video documentation that we would have.
This may be jumping the gun a bit, but do we have a policy in place as to when these cameras get activated?
We do not have one currently that would be generated along the lines. So we fall in with the policy with New York State accreditation, as well as CALIA's standards, so that, yes, we would have a policy, correct? It would be very specific.
Okay, so I think the board's totally behind it, regardless of the amount of the grant. So I think body worn makes the most sense for my own personal self, but you're the expert, so you can move forward with it.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll circle back. I'll let you know how we make out. Thank you.
Okay, great. Number 7 is the Sustainable Power Westchester Power update. I know that we had agreed, authorized, I guess, the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Westchester Power. I think it was 13 cents per kilowatt, but I think we received notification that that pricing is not going to happen, and they're looking for us for authorization to go higher. I personally don't think we have a choice in the matter. If we want to continue to stay in the program, I think the program is a valuable program. So, but if anybody else has an issue on it, just now's the time. Okay, so let's.
They couldn't find a compliant pricing, so they needed to put a new price in.
Right, got it. So where do I have a sample motion somewhere?
Yeah, here it is, right here, if you want to.
Motion's on page 61.
Is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to execute the revised memorandum of understanding with Sustainable Westchester and any other documentation in connection with the short-term extension of the 2021 ESA, both in form and substance acceptable to the village attorney? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, I think we've certainly discussed Seneca, but I think now we have to authorize the payment of this bill. And I was still seeking to be reimbursed from the state, but the bill has been sitting out there, and I think we have to pay it in order to claim that we want to get reimbursed for it, right? So is there a motion to authorize to pay ELQ Industries in the amount of $59,195 for work completed in connection with a certain proposal dated October 7th, 2021 for the emergency stabilization work? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosen Asher, all in favor? That passes unanimously. We're down to the library.
So patient. Like waiting for a book.
Okay.
Library is this much.
So the first item, I think, is the HVAC annual maintenance contracts, right?
Yes.
So go ahead.
That's strictly for 2 visits for HVAC company. They come once a year to change filters, actually twice a year, they'll change filters. And once they will check the AC system, and the second time they check the boiler system.
Okay, we don't have a choice on this. You need it to be done, right? So is there a motion to, let's put it this way, is there a motion to award the bid for annual HVAC maintenance contract to K&S HVAC with a bid amount of $3,000 for the period of June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2023? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
I just want to ask, I mean, all these things are, I assume from Jeff, are accounted for in the budget already, right?
Jeff,
They are. Yes, they are.
okay, now we're taking off the software update, Melissa? Which one are we taking off?
No,
No, I'm
all
taking
of these
off-
are on.
Yeah, okay, I
It's-
know.
yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's talk about the Dive Ferry Library software update. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
I'm sure you're aware that many years ago, it was a pneumatic driven system. And we changed probably 13, 14 years ago to a computer driven system. And obviously it's been that long. The system is old. They need to replace some of the hardware and the software. And the person we're asking to do this is basically the only person who can do it. The gentleman wrote the software that's currently being used. In order to go with another company, we would not only have to replace all the hardware, we would then have to replace the software too, which meant additional funding for writing the software. This is by far the least expensive way to go.
Now,
because it's also covered by a grant.
Right, that's what I was going to say. So $13,000 of this was covered by a grant.
Correct.
So the total bill is $13,060.
Yeah, I've actually got him to amend that to 13,000. So it stays with the grant money.
Okay, so we're just authorizing this. The resolution says $13,060.
So it should be amended to 13,000.
Okay, so is there a motion to award the project to upgrade the existing HVAC computer control system for the proposed amount of $13,000 to Empowered Buildings of Bronxville, New York? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosenberg, all in favor? That passes unanimously. And last but not least is the cleaning contract.
Basic cleaning contract. We've been doing it again for multiple years. This will be going with a different company than we've had for the last 5 years, basically just lowest bidder. They clean the library 6 days a week, and they have been doing a little bit of extra stuff since COVID, decontaminating and stuff like that.
Good.
Okay, so is there a motion to award the bid for the annual cleaning contract to cover all of Connecticut and Westchester with a bid amount of $1,479 per month for the period of June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2023? Trustee Casal, second trustee Rosenberg, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you
Sorry
very
had to
much.
Wait so long.
Thank you.
For the things that were completely given.
Yeah, right.
All right, we're going to table discussion number 13 with regard to the contract for A1 Computer Services. We need to get a little bit more information on that. So that brings us to discussion item number 14, which is a discussion regarding the purchase of a new police vehicle.
Did we miss the jazz forum? I had that as 12.
I already did that.
You passed
that-
it.
That's that.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
After the
It
presentation.
was ages ago.
That was last week.
We're approaching 3 hours, which doesn't seem like it is 3 hours. Seems like,
Time flies.
I should have skipped and you would have been done in an hour.
what'd you say, Nicole?
If I had skipped, you would have been done in an hour. That seems to be what happened.
No comment. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor Board. Just wanted to see if I could get permission to get a purchase order in order to purchase a 2021 Ford Explorer Hybrid, which was budgeted for in this current budget that will expire at the end of May 31st. So that vehicle is on the Westchester County contract, so it falls in compliance with our procurement policy. And I'm looking for $55,697.70 to equip a 2021 Ford.
Okay, so I know there's been discussion and very briefly, if you could tell us why you do not think an electric vehicle would be appropriate at this time.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I've been keeping my ear and eyes out on the progress of electric vehicles. In fact, Ford just had their all-electric police car pass last year, the Michigan State Police annual test. They do that every year. They will test police cars and provide a report. So that is actually the first electric vehicle designed specifically for police purposes. So that is just starting to roll out. So one of the other issues is just supply chain issues, backlog. So right now, I can still get another hybrid. That would be our second hybrid for our fleet. And hopefully, as we continue moving forward, supply will increase and we'll have a little bit more information on how this Mach-E is working. And we can absolutely, I'm excited about that, seeing how that'll come in the future.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the fact that, as you pointed out, we don't have DC fast charging here in Dobbsbury, and that's something that, as we think about the electric car future in Dobbsbury, we should see how we can bring some DC fast charging.
Right at that parking lot. That's where we should have charging stations.
The one down there
How long does that take to charge up?
90 minutes.
The one over there, how long does that take?
Oh,
The empty
then you get
parking
30
lot.
miles.
The empty
That's an
parking lot would
overnight.
be Perfect for charging stations and people would park there.
Okay, so I guess, any other questions for the chief? Okay, so is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to execute a purchase agreement for a total of $55,697.70 for the purchase of a 2021 Ford Hybrid Police Interceptor SUV AWD? And is there further resolved that the village will take all steps to effectuate the intent of this resolution? Is there a motion? Trustee Rosenberg, second trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes.
Thank you very much, everyone.
You're welcome. Item number 15 is to appoint a new volunteer firefighter. So we received a memo from the Assistant Fire Chief, Joe Giuliani, telling us that they have someone they'd like to appoint. So is there a motion to appoint Kevin Farrington is a volunteer firefighter for the Dobbs Ferry Fire Department effective May 10th, 2022. Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you for your service and your willingness to volunteer. Next item is discussion and a resolution regarding the stormwater report. Every year, I know our stormwater report is prepared, and we received copies of that report. And I think every year we have to authorize the village administrator to execute the annual stormwater report and submit it to the State Department of Environmental Conservation. So is there a motion to authorize the village administrator to execute the annual MS4 stormwater report and submit it to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosen Asher, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Discussion of a tax warrant for tax year 2022. Every year, we also have to empower the ability to collect the taxes. And how we do this is execute a tax warrant. So let's do that. So Jeff, you want to say anything?
No, I think you said it exactly. It's just an annual process so that I can issue the tax bills.
Donna wants to vote no, so. So is there a motion that the village treasurer, with information provided by the town assessor, is authorized to levy and collect additional village taxes upon termination of exempt status of real property in accordance with provisions section 494 of the real property tax law during the fiscal year beginning June 1st, 2022? And is there that the village treasurer shall file the tax roll and warrant in the village clerk's office on or before the first day of June 2022 to deliver to the Board of Trustees an account of the taxes remaining due and unpaid, describing each parcel of real property upon which taxes are unpaid, showing the persons or persons to whom the parcel is assessed, and showing as to each parcel the amount of tax unpaid. Is there a motion? Trustee Casal, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Consider a resolution to amend the master fee schedule pertaining to the escrow application fees. We have discussed this at 2 meetings, I believe, and I think we're in agreement with the amounts, but if not, any trustees have a question, comment about the amounts listed?
I would like to just say that there's some discretion at the building department for some of the smaller applications involving AHRB, for example, where the building inspector may not require escrow fee for small projects.
There's a footnote that says that can be adjusted up or down. And it's, when's the last time you saw that? The discretion to adjust something down, it's specifically in there.
Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, so is there a motion to adopt the following schedule of revised escrow fees for reimbursement of expenses connected to the review of application and instruct that they be included by the village clerk in the master fee schedule? Trustee Rosen Asher, seconded. Trustee Rosenberg, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Is there a motion to approve the claims audit number 1 of May 22nd, May 2022, as presented by the village treasurer in the following amount? And I believe that's $144,663.26. Is there a motion? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes unanimously. We're done. Great. So I'm going to just ask anyone if they have any announcements or reports. So Donna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I just went to the first time in almost 3 years, the Senior Advocacy Committee has met. Because of COVID, they weren't meeting. We have some couple of really terrific new members on that committee. Anybody else who's interested, please, fill out a volunteer form. They're planning a lot of new programs and projects and fundraising for the senior center, for the senior programs, and hopefully be able to open the center fully this fall. Which year, but definitely in the fall. But also with the new programs, the summer, there are going to be some extra programs happening. Anyone who is interested, please call Abby at the Senior Center at 693. Whoops. That's, what was that? No, that's not right. Yes, I just lost it. I'm sorry.
You just dialed the phone too.
I just dialed the phone too. So 693, I think it's 0024. Yep. Let me look that up.
Just call the senior.
Yes, that's the recreation number, 693-0024. Senior, I think, is 693-7792.
Thank you. Either one of those numbers. Thank you. Yeah.
Anything else done?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, Matt, do you have anything?
Nothing for me.
Sherry, you have anything?
Of course I do. The downtown committee met for the first time in a long time, and it was fabulous and came up with a lot of good ideas and a lot lively discussion focused on trying to do more events in the village to bring people. I mean, Hastings has had a lot of luck with all of their destination Hastings and things. And also they're very interested in exploring public art, which also came up with the beautification committee. So this is something looking for spaces where we could have murals and things like that. So I think that that's something that's top. Finding ways to support new businesses and making new businesses feel welcome here. And also a big topic of discussion was wayfinding and making sure that people who come to Dobbs Ferry, whether it's to go to the waterfront or eat at our restaurants or, just walk around, know where they can park, know where to go, and exploring something that they do in Nyack, which is having an interactive map right on the website that has different colors for different kinds of parking things. And many of the restaurant owners also said if we had something like that, they could also send that out to people when they're confirming reservations, so people would know where to park, as retailers can do that too. But that was something helping people to find a way. There was also some discussion about our streetlights and that the streetlights are not at the right frequency, and it's bad for the environment, it's bad for birds, so it's something to look into. There's some kind of frequency issues. Of course, there was talk of burying wires, so they're very happy that at least we're taking care of the Altice ones with the Main Street project, but there is opportunities to have further discussions, they believe, with Verizon and things like that. The Human Rights and Diversity Committee, there was a fabulous event on April 27th that Cynthia was on the panel of exploring gender, race, and privilege, and it was fantastic. I think there were 75 people on the Zoom. And it was very, very engaging. So I would say that the Greenberg Human Rights Committee will continue to do that. Everyone is all hands on deck for Pride, which will be June 25th at the waterfront. We hope everybody will come to that. And also for the downtown committee, the Phoenicia Flea will be June 11th. So we have some good events that will really encourage everyone to get outside and come to the village and do some new things. And the Human Rights and Diversity Committee is working on their calendar, so we'll have a better idea of what's coming down the pipeline. They're very appreciative, Melissa, of you posting things on Facebook, and they're hoping that things can go out in the mayor's newsletter now that that's kind of back on track. So that's good, and still looking to explore ways to do some DEI training in the village.
Can you just give me the date of the Pride?
Pride is June 25th, and the Phoenicia Flea is June 11th.
And this Sunday, there's a food
By the
truck.
food trucks,
market.
right.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the
right.
recreation
That's
department.
right.
yeah.
Right, I think from noon to 5 down at the waterfront, there'll be food trucks. I'll be at the walk for hearing, but
And
enjoy.
Trustee Asher, just a reminder, we do have an intermunicipal agreement, public-private partnership with the River Arts Organization. So they might be very interested in the downtown
Yeah, so
committee.
right now they're looking at it, looking at different spaces and what would make sense. But yes, there's talk of River Arts also. They originally wanted River Arts to provide music for Pride and things. And so they're working on that and for the Phoenicia Flea, but it's right after the River Arts big festival, the first week in June, which is also something that's coming up. So June's going to be a great month in Dobbs Ferry. So don't go on vacation in June.
Mike, do you have anything?
Reports at the ZBA tomorrow night is an issue about a net on Washington Avenue for the golf course. I will, it's an interesting and odd proposal, so I will follow that. The tree commission there's a slight reduction in applications, although the largest one includes 11 of the Norway maples that when we modified the tree code at the last meeting for one property. So I think it's a good thing that we did that. The CAB has a Chauncey Park pollinator planting event on May 21st. So I think if anyone is interested in getting their hands dirty, removing some invasive species and then planting these pollinator gardens in Chauncey Park, it's a good opportunity to get outside and work on that project.
Okay. Nicole, do you have anything?
Yes, the Youth Services Council has teamed up with the Dobbs Ferry High School Youth Club to do a color fun run walk on Saturday, May 21st at the waterfront. It's a 10 a.m. registration, 10:30 start for 12 and under, and 10:30 start, and then 11 a.m. for 13 and over. And it's to support mental health and bring awareness to the Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah, remember every year someone would come and ask us to post
Yeah,
the
those
ribbons?
ribbons,
Yummy.
Yeah.
We didn't get,
Right?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that new place, The Pod, is doing stuff to support mental health too. The chocolate store on Cedar.
Right.
People should check it out.
Yeah. Larry?
Several things. In celebration of Earth Month, the Sustainability Task Force had organized a number of different things. The Dirt Fest, so elegantly named, was a huge success last weekend down at the waterfront. Lots of families emphasizing compost, electric garden tools. Also for Earth Month, there were walking tours, a Roots and Wings presentation on composting, and I think 3 cleanups, including the Great Sawmill River cleanup, which had 45 people and took 30 bags of garbage from the Sawmill River area. So lots of good things going on there, and still to come in celebration of Earth Month on May 11th, there will be a screening of a film called Kiss the Ground. That's an upbeat film on climate change, actions that can be taken. That will be at the Dobbs Ferry Library on the evening of the 11th, so tomorrow evening. And since I'm mentioning the library, one of the things that all of us here should keep in mind as residents, that even though our former director, Elizabeth Hobson, has left, and Ned's probably, if he has any sense, has left the boardroom for the evening. But the library is there and happy to cooperate with village organizations to provide space, to provide energy, to provide resources, to run various activities. So please, even though Elizabeth did a great job communicating with the community and she's no longer here, let's not let things lapse. Let's keep the library involved and let them help you organize your event. And lastly, somebody mentioned the River Arts Festival. That is the music tour. The River Arts Music Tour is on Saturday, June the 4th. And that will be through the river towns and is a wonderful way to hear, appreciate, and enjoy local musicians.
Anything else? Any other announcements? If not, is there a motion to keep this meeting going for another hour? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting for tonight? Trustee Rosen Asher, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? Meeting's adjourned.